Snow gently fell outside as I placed the last ornament on the Christmas tree. This was my first Christmas without Gabriel, and the big empty house felt lonelier than ever. Gabriel, my husband of 15 years, had passed away 3 months ago. He left me with memories, a broken heart, and though his family didn't know it yet, full ownership of everything he had. Sara, my mother-in-law, Barbara, called out sharply, snapping me out of my thoughts. Why are there new ornaments on the tree? Our family's old decorations should be the main ones. I turned to face her, forcing a polite smile. I thought we could mix in some of the ornaments Gabriel and I collected over the years. He always loved. Gabriel isn't here anymore, she interrupted coldly. It's time things go back to how they should be. Barbara had moved in 2 weeks after the funeral, saying she needed to help me manage the house. A week later, my sister-in-law, Christine, arrived with her husband, Roy, both suddenly very interested in the family property. But Gabriel had warned me. They'll try to push you out, he had said before he died. They never thought you were good enough for me. They wanted me to marry someone from their world. Promise me you'll be ready. I promised. At the time, I thought he was just being dramatic. But now, watching Barbara rearrange the tree to her liking, I realized he had been right. The doorbell rang. Expecting the caterers for Christmas Eve dinner, I opened the door, only to find Victoria, Gabriel's ex-fiancée. My throat dropped. Victoria. Barbara rushed forward to hug her. I'm so glad you could come. I stood frozen. Come for what? Christine smirked. For Christmas Eve dinner, of course. Mom thought it would be nice to have a real family gathering. Family. After 15 years of marriage, they still considered Gabriel's ex more family than me. Throughout the evening, they showered Victoria with attention. They kept reminding me how well she had married, how involved she was in charity work, how she understood their world in a way I never could. Remember when Gabriel was going to propose at the country club? Barbara sighed. Everything was perfect before. Well, before things changed. Before he met me, I excused myself to the kitchen, needing space. But their voices carried from the dining room. Poor Gabriel, Victoria said with fake sympathy, trapped in a marriage beneath him. At least now, he's at peace. The house feels wrong with her here, Christine added. All these cheap decorations, these middle-class touches. Mother, we have to do something. Already taken care of, Barbara replied. The lawyers say that without a clear will, the property returns to the family. She'll be out by New Year's. I smiled to myself. Gabriel had known they would do this. Let them think they've won, he had advised me. Let them show their true colors. Then, when the time is right. The next day, Christmas Eve was bright and cold. Barbara bossed the staff around, while Christine and Victoria went through old photo albums, loudly reminiscing about Gabriel's life before me. More guests arrived, people who had always doubted I belonged in their world. As the party got underway, Barbara tapped her glass for attention. Friends, family, she said, this year has been difficult for all of us. Losing Gabriel has left a void that can never be filled. But tonight we start healing. We restore things to the way they should be. My heart pounded. This was it. Sara, she turned to me with a sharp smile. You've been patient these past months, but it's time to be honest. This house, this legacy, belongs to the Carter family. You understand that you can't stay here. The room went silent. Everyone watched me, some with pity, most with satisfaction. Christine stepped forward, handing me an envelope. We've arranged a modest apartment in town. Given your background, it should be more than enough. I took the envelope without opening it. You want me to leave tonight? Barbara nodded. We've already packed your things. I glanced at the suitcases by the door. They had planned this carefully, throwing me out on Christmas Eve, in front of everyone. It's snowing outside, I said quietly. This is our house now, Christine snapped. You've never belonged here anyway. Victoria placed a comforting hand on Barbara's shoulder. It's for the best. Gabriel would have wanted the house to stay in the proper family. I looked around the room. I looked at the Christmas tree, one Gabriel and I had decorated together every year. At the photos they had already started taking down. At the life we had built, the life they wanted to erase. Very well, I said calmly, picking up my coat. I'll go. Finally, she sees reason. Barbara announced proudly, Don't worry about the legal matters, dear. Our lawyers will be in touch after the holidays. I paused at the door, turning back one last time. Merry Christmas, I said softly. I'll see you all very soon. Their laughter followed me as I stepped out into the snow. What they didn't know, what Gabriel had carefully planned before he died, was about to change everything. As I drove through the snowy streets to the five-star hotel where I had already booked the presidential suite, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Marcus Chin, Gabriel's personal lawyer for the past 10 years. They did it, I told him, exactly as Gabriel predicted. On Christmas Eve. Marcus sighed, unbelievable. But this actually works in our favor. Meet me in my office first thing on the 26th. The security cameras recorded everything, I added. Every word. Gabriel's high-tech system had done its job. The second call was to Detective Sara Martinez. You have the proof, she asked immediately. Everything, I confirmed. Barbara's embezzlement from the family foundation, Christine's insurance fraud. It's all there. Gabriel kept detailed records. We'll take action on the 26th, she promised. Merry Christmas, Sara. As I pulled into the hotel's heated garage, a valet hurried forward to collect my real bags. The ones packed with things that actually mattered. Not the suitcases Barbara and Christine had so kindly packed for me. In my suite, I opened my laptop to review the final steps of Gabriel's plan. He had spent his last months preparing for this moment. He had documented every shady transaction, every secret his family had kept hidden. They'll think they've won, he had told me. That's when they'll let their guard down. They'll celebrate by accessing the foundation's accounts, thinking it's all theirs again. I smiled, remembering how determined he had been, even in his final days. His family had tried to erase me from his life, just like they had tried to stop our marriage years ago. But what they didn't know was that Gabriel had secretly transferred everything to me long before he passed away. The house, the businesses, the family foundation, everything. Legally mine. And all the paperwork was in place. Gabriel had left me something else. Proof of years of financial wrongdoing by his so-called beloved family. Barbara had been stealing money from the family's charity. Christine had been running insurance scams. And Gabriel had gathered all the evidence, carefully saved and ready to be used when the time was right. My phone buzzed with messages from their celebration. Finally got rid of the gold digger. The house can go back to its former glory. Gabriel would be so happy things are back to normal. I took screenshots and added them to the evidence file. Let them celebrate. In 1 week, their world would fall apart. As snow fell outside my luxury suite, I raised a glass of Gabriel's favorite wine. Merry Christmas, my love, I whispered. The show was about to begin. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur. While Barbara and the others enjoyed their so-called victory, I worked with Marcus, setting everything in motion. On December 26, 2 things happened at the same time. First, Marcus officially filed my ownership documents, backed by the security footage of their cruel Christmas Eve stunt. Second, Detective Martinez froze the foundation's accounts, right as Barbara tried to transfer a large bonus to herself. On December 30th, my phone rang. It was Christine. There must be some mistake, she said, her usual arrogance gone. The foundation's accounts are frozen. Mother can't access anything. No mistake, I said, just karma. What did you do? She demanded. Me? Nothing. Your mother's creative accounting finally caught up with her. And Christine, those insurance claims you filed? Investigators are very interested in those. She hung up. Moments later, Barbara called. You spiteful little witch, she hissed. How dare you interfere with the foundation? Do you even know who we are? I know exactly who you are, I replied. Gabriel knew too. That's why he spent his last months collecting proof. Silence. Then. What do you want? Want? Nothing. I already have everything. The house, the foundation, the businesses. Gabriel transferred them all to me months ago. Legally, permanently. I heard her breath catch. You're lying. Check with your lawyers, I said, though they might be a little busy. Fraud investigations take up so much time. The next morning, I walked into my mansion with Marcus and a security team. Barbara, Christine, and Roy were waiting, their lawyer standing nearby. This is our family home. Barbara snapped. You have no right to be here. Marcus stepped forward, holding up the documents. Mrs. Carter has every right. Full ownership was transferred to her by your son on June 15th with witnesses. Gabriel would never. Christine started. Actually, I said, cutting her off, it was his idea. He knew exactly what you'd do after he was gone. The only surprise was how fast you showed your true colors. Their lawyer skimmed through the paperwork. His face paled. These are legally binding. Mrs. Carter owns everything. Not everything. Barbara spat. The foundation is under investigation, Detective Martinez said, stepping inside with several officers, along with some suspicious insurance claims. I watched as their faces filled with shock. Gabriel hadn't just protected me, he had exposed them. And now they were finally facing the consequences. Detective Martinez stepped forward. Mrs. Barbara Carter, she announced, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement and fraud. This is ridiculous, Barbara shouted, looking around in panic. Victoria, call Vincent. She meant Victoria's husband, a well-connected judge. I smiled. Victoria won't be coming. She has her own legal troubles. Something about tax evasion. Barbara's face turned pale as officers led her away. Christine turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Please, she begged. You can't do this. We'll lose everything. Like you tried to ruin me? I asked calmly, throwing me out into the snow on Christmas Eve, packing my bags with old clothes. We were grieving. Roy tried to argue. No, I corrected. You were celebrating. The cameras caught everything, every cruel word, every smug little moment. Over the next few hours, they packed their real belongings, under supervision, of course. The once proud Carter family now reduced to loading suitcases into rental cars. At the door, Barbara turned back. He was my son, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, I agreed. And he spent his final months making sure you couldn't hurt me the way you hurt him. After they left, I walked through the house, my house, remembering Gabriel's words. Let them think they've won at first, then show them exactly why I fell in love with you, your strength, your intelligence, your ability to rise above their cruelty. In the months that followed, everything changed. Barbara and Christine faced legal consequences. Their high society friends abandoned them. Meanwhile, under my leadership, the Family Foundation finally started helping people instead of funding vanity projects. Without Barbara draining money, the business thrived. 1 year later, I hosted a Christmas party in the mansion, this time, with people who truly mattered. The Christmas tree sparkled with both antique and new ornaments, each one a symbol of love, memory, or hope. Gabriel would have loved it. My phone buzzed with news. Barbara and Christine had taken plea deals. No jail time, but heavy fines and mandatory community service. Their once loyal friends had turned their backs. Later that evening, as the party quieted down, I found myself in Gabriel's study. His photo rested above the fireplace, his familiar smile watching over me. You were right, I whispered. About everything. The next morning, an unexpected letter arrived. From Victoria. I was wrong about you, she wrote. Gabriel chose better than any of us realized. The foundation's actually making a difference. If you're willing, I'd like to help. I thought about it, then sent a short reply. The adult literacy program needs volunteers Tuesday nights. Don't be late. 2 years after being thrown out into the snow, I stood in the grand hall, watching as another Christmas tree was decorated. But this time, the story was different, one of justice, redemption, and turning pain into something greater. As I gazed out at the falling snow, I remembered Gabriel's final words to me. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong, love. It's building something better than they ever imagined. Looking around at the home we built, I knew we had done just that. And somewhere, I was sure Gabriel was smiling.
The words cut deeper than any knife could. Really, Mother Hall, you're becoming quite the outdated relic, aren't you? Jessica's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively across my dining room table, the one I'd served family meals on for 40 years. The crystal glasses, wedding gifts from my late husband's parents, clinked as she reached for more wine. My name is Tessa, and at 68, I've learned that the cruelest wounds often come gift-wrapped in fake smiles and backhanded compliments, especially when they're delivered by your daughter-in-law at what was supposed to be a pleasant Sunday dinner. I simply think we should consider what's best for everyone's future, Jessica continued, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. The house is far too big for you to manage alone. and Ian and I could give it the attention it deserves. My son Ian shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes fixed on his barely touched roast beef. "Jess, maybe this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," she interrupted, shooting him a look that could freeze hell itself. "We need to be practical about these things." I took a slow sip of water, buying time to steady my voice. "The house is managing just fine, dear. I rather enjoy having space for when Kendra visits, and the garden keeps me active." "The garden?" Jessica laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Is that what you call that mess of weeds? Brian next door must be thrilled about what it's doing to his property values." Actually, Brian had just yesterday commented on how lovely my roses were looking. But I didn't say that. Instead, I watched as Jessica topped up her wine glass for the third time, her expensive bracelet catching the light from my antique chandelier. "I made a chocolate cake for dessert," I said, rising from my chair. "Ian's favorite recipe." "Oh, Mother Hall, you shouldn't have." Jessica's tone shifted to sugary concern. "You know Ian's watching his weight. Besides, all that sugar at your age. We need to think about your health." I caught my reflection in the china cabinet as I walked to the kitchen. Gray hair neatly styled, wrinkles earned through years of smiling and crying, and eyes that had seen enough of life to know when someone was playing a game. Jessica might think I was just another foolish old woman, but 40 years of teaching high school English had taught me to spot manipulation from a mile away. In the kitchen, I heard Jessica's voice drop to a stage whisper. "Ian, we need to talk to her about assisted living. I found this lovely facility." My hands trembled slightly as I cut the cake, not from age or weakness, but from something else entirely. Anger, determination, perhaps both. "Mom?" Ian appeared in the doorway, his father's kind eyes looking worried. "Need help?" "I've got it, sweetheart." I smiled, sliding perfect chocolate squares onto dessert plates. "Though you might grab the coffee pot." He hesitated. About what Jessica said. "It's fine," I cut him off gently. "We all say things we don't mean sometimes." But Jessica had meant every word, and we both knew it. As I carried the cake back to the dining room, I made a decision. Tomorrow I would call Alexander, my lawyer and oldest friend. It was time to make some changes. "Oh, look at that cake," Jessica sighed dramatically. "So homey." "You know, Piper just opened this amazing little patisserie downtown. Everything's organic and gluten-free. We should really take you there sometime, Mother Hall. Show you how things are done these days." I served her a slice, with an extra dollop of whipped cream. "That sounds lovely, dear, though I doubt they use my secret ingredient." "Secret ingredient?" She raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Yes," I smiled, watching her fork hover uncertainly over the cake. "Love." Jessica's laugh was sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Oh, Mother Hall, you're absolutely precious." "Isn't she precious, Ian?" But Ian was too busy enjoying his cake to answer, and I saw a flash of real anger cross Jessica's face. Good. Let her see that some bonds couldn't be broken with snide remarks and fake concern. Later, after they'd left, and I was alone with my thoughts and dirty dishes, I found myself standing in front of the family photos on my living room wall. My late husband's smile beamed back at me, and I touched the glass gently. "You always said to kill them with kindness, dear," I whispered, "but sometimes kindness needs a little help from careful planning." I reached for my phone, scrolling to Alexander's number. Tomorrow would be soon enough to set things in motion. After all, revenge, like a good chocolate cake, is best served with patience and precision. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Tessa?" Alexander peered at me over his reading glasses, the will draft spread across his mahogany desk. The morning sun streaming through his office windows caught the silver in his hair, reminding me how long we'd known each other. "More certain than I've been about anything in years," I replied, straightening in my chair. "The house and majority of assets will go to the Children's Hospital Foundation. The rest split between the local women's shelter and the literacy program." He leaned back, fingers steepled. "And Ian?" "A modest trust, enough to show I care, but not enough to attract vultures." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Jessica won't take this lying down, Alexander warned, shuffling the papers. She's already called my office twice this week, fishing for information about your estate. That made me sit up straighter. She what? Oh yes, apparently she's concerned about your cognitive decline. Her words, not mine, he snorted. I've known you for 40 years, Tessa. The only thing declining is my tolerance for— A knock interrupted us. Alexander's secretary poked her head in. Mr. Norton is here to see you, sir. Jacoby, I whispered, my heart racing. Jessica's brother. Alexander's face darkened. Tell him I'm in a meeting. He says it's urgent, something about Mrs. Hall's estate planning. I stood up, gathering my purse. I'll use the side door, but Alexander, make copies of everything. Keep one set in your home safe. He nodded, understanding my paranoia wasn't unfounded. As I slipped out, I heard Jacoby's voice in the reception area, smooth as oil on water. I took the long way home, stopping at the coffee shop near the park. As I stirred my tea, a familiar voice carried from the booth behind me. She's getting suspicious, Piper. I can feel it. Jessica's voice was tight with frustration. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. So what? Piper replied. She's one old lady against your word. Ian trusts you. Ian's getting weird about it, though. That stupid chocolate cake last week. He wouldn't shut up about it for days. Then accelerate the plan. Jacoby said he could help with the paperwork, make it look like she's losing it. My hand shook, tea spilling onto the saucer. Paperwork? What paperwork? I don't know. Jessica sighed. The assisted living place wants proof of mental decline from her doctor. So get a different doctor, Piper said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Jacoby knows people. It's not that simple. There's the house to think about, the investments. Alexander's been her lawyer forever. He's not just going to roll over, then go around him. Once she's declared incompetent, Ian gets control, and you control Ian. I'd heard enough. Leaving money on the table, I slipped out, my mind racing. Back home, I called Kendra immediately. They're plotting something, I said, as soon as she answered. Jessica and her brother. Slow down, Tess. What exactly did you hear? I repeated the conversation, my sister's silence growing heavier with each word. You need to tell Ian, she finally said. He won't believe me. You should see how she works him. Kendra, it's like watching a spider wrap up a fly. Then document everything. Record conversations if you have to. Take pictures. Build your case. I'm not going to spy on my own family. They're spying on you, Kendra pointed out. And worse, they're planning to take everything Dad worked for and— A car door slammed outside. Through my window, I saw Jessica getting out of her SUV. Jacoby right behind her. They're here, I whispered. Both of them. Don't let them in. Kendra's voice rose. I'm coming over. No, I need to hear what they're planning. I hung up as the doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to find Jessica's perfect smile and Jacoby's expensive suit. Mother Hall, what a surprise finding you home. Jessica air-kissed my cheek. We were just discussing the family trust with my financial advisor and thought we'd stop by to chat about some options. I looked at Jacoby, who wasn't any kind of advisor I'd ever trust. How thoughtful. Would you like some tea? Perfect, Jessica beamed. And while we drink, we can talk about your future. We have some wonderful ideas to share. I led them to the living room, my mind racing. They thought they were setting a trap, but they'd just walked right into mine. After all, my phone was still recording in my pocket, capturing every word of their wonderful ideas. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about changing a will, it's about letting people reveal themselves for exactly who they are. Listen to this part again, I said, pressing play on my phone. Kendra leaned forward in her armchair, her coffee forgotten, as Jessica's recorded voice filled my living room. Just sign these papers, Mother Hall. It's all standard procedure for estate planning. Jacoby can notarize them right here. I stopped the recording. They brought fake documents, Kendra. Actual fake documents. Did you sign anything? My sister's face was tight with concern. Of course not. I told them I needed my reading glasses and escaped to the kitchen. Called Alexander right there. You should have seen how fast they left when I mentioned his name. Kendra shook her head. You need to tell Ian. Today. He's at some charity event with Jessica. Something about underprivileged youth. I couldn't keep the irony from my voice. She's probably spending more on her dress than they'll raise. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. It was Brian from next door, holding a manila envelope. Sorry to bother you, Tessa, but this was in my mailbox by mistake. He handed it over, looking worried. Everything okay? I saw Jessica's brother here yesterday. Never liked that guy. Everything's fine, Brian. Thank you. I waited until he left before opening the envelope. Inside was a letter addressed to Jessica, marked urgent, final notice. You shouldn't read that, Kendra said. But she was already looking over my shoulder. The letter was from a credit collection agency. Apparently, Jessica was 6 months behind on payments for her boutique downtown. The amount made my eyes water. Well, Kendra whispered, now we know why she's so desperate for your money. Mother Hall? Jessica's voice called from the front door, making us both freeze. Your car's here, so I know you're home. I shoved the letter into my sweater pocket as Jessica walked in, wearing designer workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Oh, Kendra's here. How nice. Jessica's smile didn't reach her eyes. Ian's worried about you, Mother Hall. You weren't answering your phone. I was having tea with my sister. I gestured to our cups. Would you like to join us? Actually, I need to talk to you about Ian, privately. She gave Kendra a pointed look. Anything you need to say to my sister, you can say in front of me. Kendra stood her ground. Jessica's perfect facade cracked slightly. Fine. Ian's concerned about your memory, Mother Hall. Yesterday with Jacoby, you seemed confused. Confused? I raised an eyebrow. About the documents you wanted me to sign without my lawyer present. Those were just standard forms. Jessica's voice rose slightly. Really, this paranoia isn't healthy. I've been researching some excellent memory care facilities. Get out. Kendra's voice was ice cold. Excuse me? You heard me. Get out of my sister's house. Jessica's face went through several expressions before settling on concern. I'm only trying to help. Ian will hear about this. Yes, I said quietly. I rather hope he does. After she left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, Kendra turned to me. You need to show Ian that letter. Not yet. I pulled it from my pocket. First, I need to find out exactly what kind of trouble his wife is in. Later that evening, Ian called. I could hear Jessica in the background, her voice high and upset. Mom, Jessica says you and Aunt Kendra were really rude to her today. Did she tell you why she came over? Something about helping with estate planning. Mom, she's worried about you. We both are. I see. I looked at the collection letter on my coffee table. Ian, honey, do you handle the finances for Jessica's boutique? What? No, she manages all that. Why? Just curious. How about your joint accounts? Do you look at those statements? Mom, what are you getting at? He sounded irritated now. Nothing, sweetheart. Just remember that I love you, okay? After hanging up, I called Alexander. I need you to look into something, I said. Jessica's boutique downtown. Something's not right with the finances. Already on it, he replied. And Tessa, I found something else. A letter from Jacoby to Jessica from 6 months ago. It fell out of his briefcase yesterday when he was here. My heart skipped. What does it say? Let's just say it confirms everything we suspected. Come by tomorrow morning. And Tessa, bring that collection letter you found. We're going to need it. I sat in my quiet house, looking at the family photos on the wall. Soon, very soon, all the pieces would fall into place. Jessica thought she was playing chess, but she'd forgotten one important thing. I'd been teaching strategy to high school students longer than she'd been alive. Alexander spread the documents across his desk like a dealer laying out cards. Look at this, he pointed to Jacoby's letter. He's not just helping Jessica with fake medical evaluations. He's been cooking the books at her boutique for months. I scanned the letter, my hands shaking. He's laundering money through her store. Among other things, Alexander pulled out more papers. The boutique's been running at a loss for 2 years, but somehow Jessica keeps pulling out large sums of money. Care to guess where it's going? Offshore accounts, I whispered, remembering snippets of conversations I'd overheard between her and Piper. The office door burst open. Mrs. Hall. Alexander's secretary looked panicked. Jessica and her brother are here. They're demanding to see you both. Perfect timing. Alexander smiled grimly, pressing a button on his desk phone. Send them in. Jessica stormed in, Jacoby right behind her. Her designer heels clicked aggressively on the hardwood floor. How dare you go through my private correspondence, she hissed, spotting the letter in my hands. Private correspondence that was dropped in my office? Alexander raised an eyebrow. That's now evidence in a potential fraud investigation. Jacoby stepped forward, all smooth confidence. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Those documents are protected under attorney-client privilege. You're not an attorney, Jacoby, I said quietly. We checked. You were disbarred 3 years ago. The color drained from Jessica's face. Mother Hall, please. Whatever you think you know, I know everything. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording from my living room. Jessica's voice filled the room, discussing fake medical evaluations and forged documents. That's illegal, Jacoby snapped. You can't record people without their consent. In this state, you can if you're gathering evidence of a crime, Alexander countered, which conspiracy to commit elder fraud certainly is. Jessica's perfect mask cracked completely. You stupid old woman. Do you have any idea what you've done? That money was supposed to be mine. Ian promised. Ian promised what exactly? A new voice asked from the doorway. We all turned to see my son standing there, his face ashen. Behind him stood 2 police officers and a man in a suit who flashed an FBI badge. Ian! Jessica's voice turned sugary sweet. Darling, I can explain everything. Your mother is confused. Stop. Ian held up his hand. Just stop. I heard everything. The FBI has been watching Jacoby's financial dealings for months. They came to me last week with questions about the boutique's accounts. You've been working with them. Jessica's voice rose to a shriek. Since they showed me proof that you've been stealing from my mother's accounts, small amounts, siphoned off gradually. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I hadn't known about Ian's involvement. Looking at my son now, I saw not the little boy who needed protecting, but a man who'd grown strong enough to face hard truths. Mrs. Norton, the FBI agent stepped forward. We have some questions about your financial dealings with your brother, and about certain documents you attempted to have Mrs. Hall sign. This is ridiculous. Jacoby tried to push past Ian. You have nothing concrete. We have everything. Ian's voice was cold. Every transfer, every forged document, every conversation about having my mother declared incompetent. It's over. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The officers led Jessica and Jacoby away, their protests echoing down the hallway. I watched through the window as they were placed in separate police cars. Mom, Ian turned to me, his eyes wet. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it sooner. You saw it when it mattered. I pulled him into a hug, feeling his shoulders shake. Did you know? He asked. About me working with the FBI? No, I smiled. I was running my own investigation. Great minds think alike, I suppose. Alexander cleared his throat. We should discuss next steps. The FBI will want formal statements, and there's the matter of the will. The will stays exactly as it is, I said firmly. The majority goes to charity, with a trust for Ian. That was always the plan, even before all this. Ian squeezed my hand. I never wanted your money, Mom. I just wanted you to be safe. I know, sweetheart. I looked at the scattered papers on Alexander's desk, evidence of Jessica's greed and manipulation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about keeping wealth from people who want it. It's about showing them that some things, like family, trust, and integrity are worth more than money ever could be. As we left Alexander's office together, I felt lighter than I had in months. The truth had finally come to light, and with it, a chance for my family to heal and rebuild. The morning paper lay on my kitchen table, Jessica and Jacoby's faces staring up from the front page. Local boutique owner and brother arrested in fraud scheme. The headline screamed. My tea had gone cold as I read through the details for the third time. The doorbell rang. It was Piper, looking nothing like her usual polished self. Mrs. Hall, she twisted her designer handbag strap. I need to talk to you about Jessica. I stepped aside to let her in, noting her nervous energy. Would you like some tea? Look, I know what you must think of me, she blurted out. But Jessica told me things, made promises. About my money, I kept my voice neutral as I poured her tea. She said you were losing your grip on reality, that helping her was really helping you. Piper's hands shook as she accepted the cup. But then I saw the news, and the FBI came to question me this morning. The front door opened, and Ian walked in. His face hardened when he saw Piper. What's she doing here? Apparently, confessing, I said, watching Piper shrink under my son's glare. I want to make things right, Piper said quickly. Jessica, she has other accounts, ones the FBI doesn't know about yet, and there are more people involved. Ian pulled out his phone. I'm calling Agent Roberts. Wait, I held up my hand. Let's hear what she has to say first. Piper pulled a USB drive from her purse. Everything's here. Account numbers, emails, recorded conversations. Jessica kept receipts of everything. She said it was her insurance policy if things went wrong. Insurance against whom? Ian asked. Everyone. You, her brother, even that lawyer friend of hers who helped set up the offshore accounts. My phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. Emergency. Jessica requesting private meeting with you. Police approved. Decision needed ASAP. She wants to see me, I announced, showing Ian the message. Absolutely not, he snapped. Actually, Piper leaned forward. You might want to. Jessica's desperate. When she's desperate, she talks. I thought about it for a moment. Call Agent Roberts. Tell him I'll meet with Jessica, but I want everything recorded. 2 hours later, I sat across from Jessica in a small room at the police station. Her designer outfit had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit, but her spine was still ramrod straight. Mother Hall, she attempted her usual sweet smile. Thank you for coming. What do you want, Jessica? To apologize. She leaned forward. I was wrong. About everything. If you drop the charges, I'll make it right. I'll tell Ian everything. Return every penny. Like the money you stole from the children's cancer charity at your last fundraiser. I watched her face freeze. Yes, Piper told us about that too. That little snake, Jessica hissed, mask slipping. After everything I did for her. You mean blackmailing her with photos of her affair with your brother? Jessica's eyes narrowed. You're not as helpless as you pretend to be, are you? I taught high school for 40 years, dear. I can spot a mean girl running a con from a mile away. Fine. She sat back, all pretense gone. What do you want? Nothing. The FBI has everything they need. This meeting was just to give you a chance to do the right thing. I stood up. You failed that test too. Wait, real panic crept into her voice. The prosecution offered a deal. If I give them everything on Jacoby's operation, they'll recommend a lighter sentence. But I need character witnesses. If you and Ian would just... Goodbye, Jessica. You can't do this to me, she shrieked as I reached the door. I'm family. I turned back one last time. No, dear. You're just someone who tried to steal from family. There's a difference. Outside, Ian was waiting with Agent Roberts. How did it go? About as expected. I handed the agent the recording device they'd given me. She's all yours. Mom, Ian hesitated. There's something else. The FBI found evidence that Jessica, she might have had something to do with Dad's medication mix-up last year. The world tilted slightly. My husband's sudden decline had seemed so strange at the time. We'll need you to testify, Agent Roberts said gently. Both of you. I gripped Ian's hand, feeling his strength flow into me. Then that's what we'll do. Later that night, Kendra came over with dinner. As we sat in my living room, the evening news played quietly in the background, showing Jessica and Jacoby being led into court. "Are you okay?" my sister asked softly. I looked at the family photos on my wall, my husband's smile forever frozen in time. "I will be. The truth has a way of healing things, even if it hurts at first." Speaking of truth, Ian set down his fork. "There's something else you should know. I'm selling the house Jessica and I bought. Moving back here, if you'll have me." For the first time in months, I felt tears of joy rather than sorrow. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting your family back. The prosecution calls Tessa Hall to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as I made my way forward. Jessica sat at the defense table, her orange jumpsuit, a stark contrast to her lawyer's expensive suit. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mrs. Hall," the prosecutor approached, "please tell the court about your husband's final months." "Objection." Jessica's lawyer jumped up. "Relevance goes to pattern of behavior and motive, Your Honor." "Overruled. Proceed, Mrs. Hall." I gripped the microphone, my voice steady. Robert was healthy, active. Then suddenly, he started getting confused. The doctors couldn't explain it. "And did the defendant have access to your home during this time?" "Yes, she had a key. Said she wanted to check on us. Help with medications." Jessica shifted in her seat, her handcuffs catching the fluorescent light. "The FBI found these in the defendant's safety deposit box." The prosecutor held up a small bottle. "Can you identify them?" "Those are Robert's heart pills. The same pills that, when tested, showed traces of dangerous substances not prescribed to your husband." "Objection." Jessica's lawyer shouted again. "Withdrawn." The prosecutor smiled slightly. "Mrs. Hall, tell us about the defendant's attempts to have you declared incompetent." For the next hour, I detailed everything. The fake documents, the recorded conversations, the financial fraud. Through it all, Jessica sat stone-faced, but I could see her fingers trembling. During the recess, Ian found me in the hallway. "You did great, Mom. But there's something else." The FBI found emails. Jessica was planning this before she even married me. My heart clenched. "She targeted you." Apparently, she and Jacoby researched wealthy families, Dad's company, our assets. I was just her ticket in. His voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I brought her into our lives." I hugged him tight. "You have nothing to apologize for. She fooled a lot of people." "Mrs. Hall," Agent Roberts approached. "We need to discuss the next phase of testimony. It's about the charity fraud." Back in the courtroom, Jessica's lawyer tried one last desperate move. "Your Honor, my client wishes to address Mrs. Hall directly." The judge peered over his glasses. "Mrs. Hall, are you comfortable with this?" I nodded, curious what she could possibly say. Jessica stood, tears streaming down her face. "Mother Hall, Tessa." I was desperate. The boutique was failing. Jacoby was threatening me. I never meant for any of this to happen. "Save the performance," Ian muttered from behind me. "I loved Robert like my own father," Jessica continued. "And I love you. Please, if you speak to the judge about leniency." "Mrs. Norton," the judge interrupted. "Are you attempting to manipulate a witness in my courtroom?" Jessica's tears dried instantly. "I'm trying to make amends." "By lying again." I stood up. "Should we play the recording where you laughed about Robert's confusion? Or show the emails where you planned all this before you even met my son?" The courtroom erupted in whispers. Jessica's lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "Order." The judge banged his gavel. "Mrs. Norton, sit down." "Mrs. Hall, would you like a moment?" "No, Your Honor. I'd like to say something if I may." He nodded. I turned to face Jessica fully. "I've been thinking about karma lately, how everything comes full circle. You thought I was just a foolish old woman you could push aside. But I taught literature for 40 years. I know how stories like this end." "Your Honor," Jessica's lawyer started. "Let her finish," the judge commanded. "The thing about karma, Jessica, is that it teaches us lessons. Your lesson, Sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones you should have feared the most. The rest of the day passed in a blur of testimony and evidence. By evening, Jessica's lawyer was desperately pushing for a plea deal. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. "Mrs. Hall, how do you feel about your daughter-in-law's betrayal? Will you be attending tomorrow's hearing about the charity fraud? Any comment on the allegations about your husband's death?" Alexander appeared, parting the crowd. "My client has no comment. Please respect her privacy." As we drove home, Ian reached over and squeezed my hand. "One more day of testimony, Mom. Then it's over." "Not quite," I said, thinking of the dinner I had planned for the weekend. "There's still the matter of the will reading. I've invited some special guests. The charity representatives," I smiled. "Among others." Jessica thought she was playing a long game. She never realized I was playing a longer one. That night, I sat in Robert's old chair, looking at our wedding photo. "You always said justice finds its way," I whispered. "I wish you could see it happening." A text from Alexander lit up my phone. "Plea deal offered, 15 years minimum. They're taking it." I closed my eyes, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Tomorrow would bring more drama, but tonight, at least, karma had done its job. The formal dining room hadn't seen this many people since Robert's wake. Alexander stood at the head of the table, documents spread before him, while representatives from 3 different charities sat along one side. Ian, Kendra, and even Brian from next door filled the other chairs. And at the far end, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, sat Piper. Before we begin the official reading, Alexander adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Hall would like to say a few words." I stood, feeling stronger than I had in months. "Thank you all for coming. Some of you might wonder why I've gathered such an unusual group for this reading." Piper shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "My late husband built his fortune on one principle: doing good matters more than doing well. Jessica never understood that. She saw money as power, not responsibility." "Mom," Ian started, but I held up my hand. "Let me finish, dear. Today isn't just about revealing my will. It's about revealing what wealth can do in the right hands." Alexander nodded and began reading. "To the Children's Hospital Foundation, 40% of the estate, specifically for their pediatric cancer research program." The hospital representative gasped softly. "To the Women's Shelter, 30%, earmarked for their education and job training programs." Tears appeared in the shelter director's eyes. "To the Literary Foundation, 20%, dedicated to adult literacy programs in underserved communities." The foundation's representative was already scribbling notes. "And to my son, Ian." Alexander paused, looking up. 10%, plus the family home, with one condition." Ian leaned forward. "Condition? That you use part of it to establish a scholarship fund in your father's name at the high school where I taught, for students interested in business ethics." A laugh rippled through the room. Even Ian smiled, understanding the pointed message to Jessica, though she wasn't present to hear it. "There's more," Alexander continued. "Mrs. Hall has also arranged for annual donations to be made to the FBI's fraud prevention program, specifically their elder abuse division." Piper stood abruptly. "I should go." "Sit down," I said firmly. "There's something for you too." Her eyes widened. "For me?" "Yes. In exchange for your testimony against Jessica and Jacoby, I'm providing seed money for a new business, a legitimate one this time." I don't understand," she stammered. "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said, "but only one. Use it wisely." The charity representatives were already discussing plans, their excitement filling the room with energy. The hospital director approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Hall, this will fund our research for years. We can help so many children." "That's the point," I smiled. "Money is like water. It can destroy if it's hoarded, but it can give life if it flows freely." Ian came up beside me, his arm around my shoulders. "Dad would be proud, Mom. Though I wish that Jessica could see this." I finished his thought. "Oh, she will." I've arranged for her to receive detailed annual reports of every life changed by these donations, every child helped, every woman empowered, every adult who learns to read. That's a special kind of torture for someone like her, Kendra remarked with satisfaction. Alexander cleared his throat. There's one final item. Mrs. Hall has established a trust for any future grandchildren, accessible only after they complete significant community service hours. Ian's eyes filled with tears. Mom, just because one door closed doesn't mean others won't open. I squeezed his hand. Your father always said the best revenge is living well. I think helping others live well is even better. The meeting continued. Plans were made. Papers were signed. As people began to leave, Piper lingered. Mrs. Hall, why are you really helping me? Because Jessica didn't just hurt me, she hurt everyone around her. Breaking that cycle of harm starts with giving people better choices. After everyone left, Ian and I sat in the living room, looking at old photos. You know, he said quietly, when all this started, I thought you were the one who needed protecting. I never imagined that your old mother could orchestrate all this? I laughed. Age brings wisdom, dear. And wisdom teaches us that the best way to fight darkness is to create light. My phone buzzed. A message from Agent Roberts. Jessica received the will details. She's requesting another meeting. Are you going to see her? Ian asked, reading over my shoulder. No, I replied, putting the phone away. She wanted my attention for months. Now she can live with the knowledge that she'll never have it again. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others. But tonight, sitting with my son in the house where he grew up, I felt nothing but peace. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, doing better, and helping others do the same. The morning newspaper landed on my doorstep with a satisfying thud. Local charity transforms lives. Hall Foundation celebrates first year of community impact, blazed across the front page. Below it, a photo showed smiling children in the new cancer ward, their hope-filled faces, a stark contrast to the small article tucked in the corner about Jessica's denied appeal. The doorbell rang. It was Piper, clutching a folder and looking nervous despite her new professional attire. Mrs. Hall, I wanted you to be the first to see this. She handed me the folder. The audit results from my new business. Everything transparent, everything legal. I scanned the documents, noting the healthy profit margins and substantial charitable donations. You've done well. Thanks to you. She hesitated. I saw Jessica yesterday, at the prison. My hand stilled on the papers. Oh? She wanted me to beg you to change the will. Again. Piper shook her head. I told her to read the newspaper instead. The front door opened, and Ian walked in carrying breakfast bags. Mom, you won't believe who I just... Oh, hello, Piper. I was just leaving, she said quickly. But Mrs. Hall, thank you for showing me there's a better way to succeed. After she left, Ian unpacked fresh croissants and coffee. That's quite a headline today. Indeed, I sipped my coffee. Though I suspect you didn't come just to discuss the newspaper. He grinned. No, I met someone, a teacher at my old high school, actually. She runs the business ethics scholarship program we funded. The one Jessica hates so much? I couldn't help smiling. The very same. Sara's different. Real. She volunteers at the women's shelter on weekends. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Alexander, waving another newspaper. Have you seen the business section? Jessica's boutique building is being converted into a community center. The irony is delicious. Come have coffee, I offered. Ian was just telling me about Sara. Ah, yes, the ethics teacher. Alexander winked. I hear she's quite impressive. You knew? Ian looked surprised. My dear boy, your mother and I have been friends for 40 years. We know everything. The morning passed pleasantly, filled with plans and possibilities. Around noon, Kendra arrived with a letter. This came to my house by mistake, she said, handing me an envelope with the prison's return address. Another plea from Jessica. Actually, no. Kendra sat down. It's from Jacoby. He's agreed to testify about Robert's medication tampering. Says he can't live with it anymore. The room fell silent. Finally, closure for Robert. I'll call Agent Roberts, Alexander said quietly, stepping out. Ian took my hand. Are you okay, Mom? Better than okay. I squeezed his fingers. Your father always said truth finds its way to the surface, like cream rising to the top. The doorbell chimed once more. This time it was Brian, holding a rose from his garden. Thought you might like this, Tessa. It's from that bush Robert helped me plant years ago. Finally bloomed. I took the flower, its perfume bringing back memories of Robert tending our garden. Perfect timing, Brian. We're celebrating today. The newspaper article? He beamed. Saw that. You showed them all what real class looks like, Tessa. Not just the article, I said. We're celebrating life, changes, new beginnings. Ian cleared his throat. Speaking of which, Sarah's coming for dinner tonight. I thought, maybe, if you'd like to meet her. I'd love to. I placed the rose in a vase. Your father always said the best revenge against darkness is to create more light. I think he'd be happy to see us all here, moving forward, making things better. Alexander returned, his phone call complete. Agent Roberts says they'll reopen the investigation into Robert's death. Jacoby's testimony changes everything. Good, I said firmly. But right now, I want to focus on life. Ian, tell us more about Sara. As my son talked about his new relationship, his face glowing with possibility, I looked around my living room. Kendra and Alexander arguing playfully about dinner plans. Brian sharing gardening tips. The newspaper headlines promising hope to strangers. Even Piper finding her way to honest success. This was real wealth, not the money Jessica coveted, but the richness of relationships, of doing good, of making a difference. The rose's perfume filled the room, and for a moment I felt Robert's presence so strongly it took my breath away. He would have loved this. Family, friends, justice, and hope, all intertwined. Mom? Ian touched my arm. What are you thinking about? That sometimes the happy ending isn't what we expected, I smiled. Sometimes it's better. Outside, children laughed as they passed by, probably heading to the new community center. Inside, my family and friends continued planning dinner, their voices warm and real, and alive with possibility. This was victory, not just over Jessica's schemes, but over darkness itself. One good deed, one changed life, one blooming rose at a time.
The letter from First National Bank sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I must have read it 20 times, but the words still didn't make sense. Our family farm, the one my grandparents built from nothing, the one where I spent every summer of my childhood, was apparently in default on a mortgage I didn't even know existed. My name is Peyton, and until that morning I thought I knew everything about our family's finances. I'm the one who helped Mom with the accounting after Dad passed, the one who tracked every penny we spent on equipment and seeds. But this was completely off the books. My hands were shaking as I dialed Mom's number. Are you home? We need to talk. I'm actually heading to the store, Mom said, her voice cheerful. Can it wait? We still need to plan the menu for Christmas dinner. No, it can't wait. This is about the farm. There was a pause on the other end. I'll be there in 15 minutes. While waiting, I paced my small apartment, trying to make sense of it all. The farm had been paid off decades ago. Grandpa made sure of that before he died. The framed mortgage-burning photo still hung in the farmhouse dining room. So where did this new loan come from? Mom arrived wearing her gardening clothes, dirt still fresh on her knees. Her face fell when she saw the letter in my hand. Where did you get that? She asked, reaching for it. I pulled it back. It was delivered here by mistake. Mum, what's going on? Why is there a mortgage on the farm? She sank into my couch, suddenly looking older than her 48 years. Your Uncle Kerry said it was temporary, just a small business loan to invest in some new equipment. Uncle Kerry? My stomach dropped. What does he have to do with the farm's finances? He's been helping manage things since your father passed. You know how good he is with money. Was good with money, I corrected her. Before the casino opened in Cedar Rapids. Peyton, that's not fair. He's your father's brother. I slapped the letter down on the coffee table. Then explain this. $300,000, Mom. That's not equipment money. That's selling the farm money. Mom's face went pale. That's impossible. Kerry promised. When did he ask you to sign for this loan? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't sign anything. The room went silent except for the hum of my refrigerator. What do you mean you didn't sign anything? Your name is on this letter. Kerry said he'd handle all the paperwork. He just needed my verbal okay. I felt sick. Mom, that's not how mortgages work. Someone had to sign these documents. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Kerry himself. Family dinner tonight at my place. Important news to share. 6 p.m. I showed Mom the text. Her hands started trembling. He couldn't have. Oh, I think he could, I said, grabbing my car keys. And I think we're about to find out exactly what he did. Mom grabbed my arm. Wait, Peyton, maybe we should talk to him privately first. Why? So he can spin another story? Feed us more lies? I was already heading for the door. No, Mom, I'm done with secrets. If he has news to share, let's hear it. But I'm bringing this letter with me. Your cousin Marcus will be there, Mom said, following me. And Aunt Audrey. Maybe we should wait. Perfect. I cut her off. The whole family should hear this, because if Uncle Kerry did what I think he did, this isn't just about a loan. This is about our legacy. Everything Grandpa and Grandma built. As we drove to Kerry's house, I could see Mom fighting back tears. The farm wasn't just property to us, it was our history, our future, the place where every important family moment had played out. The thought of losing it because of Uncle Kerry's investments made my blood boil. I should have paid more attention, Mom whispered. After your father died, It was easier to let Kerry handle things. I reached over and squeezed her hand. This isn't your fault, Mom, but we're going to fix it. Whatever it takes. We pulled into Kerry's driveway just as Marcus was getting out of his truck. One look at my face and he knew something was wrong. Peyton, what's going on? I held up the bank letter. We're about to find out. Hope everyone's hungry for a side of truth with dinner. The front door opened and there stood Uncle Kerry, wearing his usual confident smile. But this time, I saw right through it. This time, I was ready for war. Uncle Kerry's dining room felt smaller than usual that night, cramped with tension and unspoken accusations. Aunt Audrey bustled around, setting out her famous pot roast, while Kerry held court at the head of the table, acting like everything was normal. Pass the potatoes, would you, Peyton? He asked, as if I hadn't been clutching the bank letter like a weapon throughout the entire meal. I slid the bowl across the table without a word. Marcus, sitting next to me, gave my knee a reassuring squeeze under the table. So, Kerry cleared his throat. I wanted to gather everyone because I have some exciting news about the farm's future. Funny you should mention the farm, I said, pulling out the letter. Care to explain this first? The room went silent. Aunt Audrey stopped mid-pour with the gravy boat hovering over Kerry's plate. Where did you get that? Kerry's smile flickered but didn't quite fade. Does it matter? What matters is why our farm suddenly has a $300,000 mortgage on it. Peyton, Aunt Audrey cut in, this is hardly dinner conversation. Actually, Marcus spoke up, I'd like to hear about this too. That farm's been in our family for 3 generations. Kerry dabbed his mouth with a napkin, buying time. It's all part of a broader investment strategy. I've been diversifying our assets. By gambling away our inheritance? The words shot out before I could stop them. Peyton, Mom gasped. Kerry's face darkened. I don't appreciate what you're implying. Then explain the mortgage. Show us these amazing investments you've made, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you forged Mom's signature to take out a loan on property that isn't even yours. Aunt Audrey slammed her hand on the table. How dare you accuse your uncle? I have proof, I said, pulling out more papers from my bag. The bank confirmed Mom never appeared in person to sign these documents. So either you hired a very talented forger, Uncle Kerry, or you did it yourself. Kerry stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You're out of line, young lady. I've managed this family's finances for years. "And how many trips to the Riverside Casino have you made this month?" Marcus asked quietly. "Because I saw your car there last weekend. And the weekend before." The colour drained from Kerry's face. "I was meeting business associates." "At the blackjack tables?" I pressed. "Or was it poker this time?" "Kerry?" Aunt Audrey's voice had lost its edge of certainty. "What are they talking about?" He spread his hands in a placating gesture. "Look, I've made some strategic investments that will benefit everyone. The farm's value has been sitting stagnant for years. I found a way to make it work for us." "By selling it?" I pulled out one final document, a real estate listing I'd discovered online. "Were you going to tell everyone before or after you closed the deal?" Mum started crying softly. Marcus cursed under his breath. Even Aunt Audrey looked shocked. "It's not what you think," Kerry insisted, but his voice had gone hoarse. "The buyer is offering well above market value. We could all have a fresh start." "That farm is our fresh start," I cut him off. "It's our heritage, our home. You had no right." Just then, Kerry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I caught a glimpse of the caller ID. Lucky Seven's management. "Excuse me," he muttered, heading for the hallway. "I need to take this." "Of course you do," I called after him. "Another business associate?" The conversation from the hallway was muffled but clear enough. "Yes, I'll have it by Friday. No need to send anyone. I said I'll handle it." When he returned, his confident facade had crumbled completely. "Dinner's over. I think you should all leave." "This isn't over, Kerry," I said, gathering my things. "Not by a long shot." As we filed out, Mom lingered behind with her brother. I heard her say softly, "How could you do this to us?" His response chilled me to the bone. "You don't understand what's at stake here, Laurel. Some things can't be undone." In the driveway, Marcus grabbed my arm. "You know this is just the beginning, right? Kerry won't go down without a fight." "Good," I replied, watching my uncle through the window as he paced, still on his phone, "because neither will I." Mom emerged from the house, wiping her eyes. "What do we do now?" I hugged her tight, my mind already racing with plans. Now we dig deeper. Because if there's one thing I learned tonight, it's that Uncle Kerry is hiding way more than just gambling debts. As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse of Kerry in my rearview mirror. He was watching us leave, his phone still pressed to his ear, looking more like a cornered animal than the uncle I once trusted. This was war, and I intended to win. "You're not going to believe what I found," Marcus said, spreading papers across my kitchen table the next morning. He'd spent the night digging through county records, and the dark circles under his eyes showed it. "Show me everything," I said, sliding him a cup of coffee. "So the mortgage isn't the only thing Kerry's been hiding. Look at these property transfers." He pointed to a series of documents. "He's been selling off parcels of the farm piece by piece for the last 8 months. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. "That's impossible. We would have noticed." "Not if he kept the original boundaries intact on paper. He's been selling usage rights, mineral rights, anything he could parcel off without changing the official property lines." A knock at the door made us both jump. It was my sister Reese, looking skeptical as ever. "Mom told me you're on some crusade against Uncle Kerry," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "Don't you think you're overreacting?" I gestured to the papers. "Take a look for yourself." As Reese scanned the documents, her expression shifted from doubt to disbelief. "These signatures, they look like Mom's, but—" "They're forgeries," Marcus confirmed. "Good ones, but definitely fake. Look at the loop on the L. Mom always extends hers." "I still can't believe Uncle Kerry would do this," Reese muttered. "He helped me pay for college." "With whose money?" I asked pointedly. "Because I'm starting to wonder if any of his generosity actually came from him." Marcus pulled out his phone. "That's not all. Remember that business trip he took to Vegas last month? I found these on his social media." The photos showed Kerry at various casino tables, stacks of chips in front of him. In one particularly damning image, he was shaking hands with someone whose jacket clearly showed the Lucky Sevens logo. "I need to check something," I said, heading to my bedroom. I returned with a small box of papers I'd grabbed from Kerry's study during the chaos of last night's dinner. You stole from his office? Reese looked horrified. I borrowed evidence, I corrected her, dumping the contents onto the table. And look what we have here. Among credit card statements and receipts was a hotel bill from the Lucky Sevens resort and casino. But it wasn't the amount that caught my attention. It was the handwritten note in the margin. Payment plan discussed with Tony. $50K month until squared. 50,000 a month? Marcus whistled. That's not gambling money, that's loan shark territory, I finished. No wonder he's selling everything that isn't bolted down. Reese sank into a chair. This is bad, isn't it? Like really bad? It gets worse, Marcus said, pulling up another document on his laptop. I found the buyer for the farm. It's a shell company owned by, guess who, Lucky Sevens Management Group. My blood ran cold. They're not buying the farm. They're taking it as payment. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Kerry's here. Says he can explain everything. Please come over. I showed the message to Marcus and Reese. You thinking what I'm thinking? That he knows we're on to him. Marcus stood up, gathering the papers. Definitely. I'm coming with you, Reese announced, surprising me. I want to hear him try to talk his way out of this. We drove to Mom's house in tense silence. When we arrived, Kerry's expensive SUV was in the driveway looking out of place next to Mom's old sedan. Through the window we could see them in the kitchen. Kerry was gesturing animatedly while Mom sat at the table, her face in her hands. Ready? I asked, my hand on the door handle. Wait, Reese grabbed my arm. Look. A black luxury car pulled up across the street. Two men in suits stepped out but didn't approach the house. They just stood there, watching. Lucky Sevens welcoming committee, Marcus muttered. This isn't just about the farm anymore, is it? Reese's voice shook slightly. I squared my shoulders. No, it's not, but that doesn't change anything. We're going in there and we're going to make Uncle Kerry tell us exactly what kind of mess he's gotten our family into. As we walked to the door, I could feel the suited men's eyes on us. Whatever Kerry had gotten himself into, it was bigger and more dangerous than I'd imagined. But turning back wasn't an option, not with our family's legacy on the line. I took one last look at the men across the street, then opened the door. The sound of Kerry's desperate explanations spilled out into the morning air, along with Mom's quiet sobs. Time to find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. The kitchen fell silent as we walked in. Kerry stood by the sink, his expensive suit wrinkled, looking like he hadn't slept. Mom sat at the table, tissues scattered around her. Well, if it isn't the amateur detective squad, Kerry said, attempting his usual smirk but failing. Cut the act, I snapped. Who are your friends outside? His face twitched. What friends? The two guys in suits watching the house, Marcus said. They with Lucky Sevens. Kerry's attempt at composure crumbled. You don't understand what you're dealing with. None of you do. Then explain it, Mom pleaded. Tell us the truth, Kerry. All of it. Before he could answer, Aunt Audrey burst through the back door. Kerry, I just got a call from the bank. They're saying our house is being used as collateral for... She stopped short when she saw all of us. Your house too? I turned to Kerry. Just how much have you leveraged? I had a system, he said, pacing now. It was working. I was up almost $500,000 at one point. Until you weren't, Marcus finished. Kerry slumped against the counter. Tony, he runs the high-stakes room at Lucky Sevens. He said he'd give me time to pay it back. But then, the interest started piling up. So, you sold pieces of our farm, I said. Forged Mom's signature. And, when that wasn't enough, you decided to sell the whole thing? Aunt Audrey gasped. Kerry, tell me that's not true. A knock at the front door made everyone freeze. Through the window, I saw one of the suited men standing on the porch. Don't, Kerry warned as I moved toward the door. They're not here for a friendly chat. But another figure appeared behind the suited man. Willie, our old family friend and retired lawyer. I opened the door. Morning, Peyton, Willie said calmly. Thought I might find everyone here. He nodded to the suited man. You can tell Tony I'm handling this now. The man hesitated, then retreated to his car. Willie, Kerry started. This isn't... Shut up, Kerry, Willie cut him off, entering the kitchen. I've known your family 30 years, watched you kids grow up. Never thought I'd see the day one of you would betray your own blood like this. He set his briefcase on the table and pulled out a folder. Lucky for everyone, I've been keeping my own records, ever since I noticed unusual activity on the farm's property listings. You knew? Mum asked. I suspected, Willie replied. Been gathering evidence, just in case, including security footage from Lucky Sevens showing Kerry here making some very interesting deals. Kerry went pale. You can't. Can't what? Show how you've been laundering money through the casino? Using the farm to cover illegal loans? Willie's voice was steel. Try me. Aunt Audrey started crying. Kerry, what have you done? I can fix this, Kerry insisted. Just need a little more time. Time's up, I said, pulling out my phone. Those property transfers you made? I sent them to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division this morning. The room went dead quiet. You didn't, Kerry whispered. I did. And you know what they found really interesting? The connection between Lucky Seven's management and certain offshore accounts. Marcus stepped forward. Face it, Uncle Kerry. It's over. Kerry's phone buzzed. His hands shook as he read the message. Tony's pulling out of the deal. Says it's too hot now. He looked up, desperate. Do you know what they'll do to me? Should have thought of that before you gambled away our heritage, I said. Willie opened his briefcase again. There's a way to minimize the damage, but you'll have to come clean. About everything. And the farm? Mom asked quietly. The sales can be reversed, Willie assured her. Kerry's forgeries make them legally void, but... He looked at Kerry. You'll have to testify against Lucky Sevens. They'll kill me, Kerry protested. They won't, Willie said, because by this afternoon, the FBI will have their entire operation. You're small fish, Kerry, but only if you cooperate now. I watched my uncle, the man who'd once taught me to ride a bike, who'd given speeches at family gatherings about the importance of legacy, crumble into a chair. Okay, he whispered. Okay. As Willie started making calls, Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Outside, the black car finally pulled away. What happens now? Reese asked. I looked around at my family, broken but not destroyed, shaken but still standing. Now we rebuild. Together. Through the window, I could see the distant fields of our farm still there, still ours. Whatever came next, we'd face it as a family, minus one uncle who'd learned the hard way that betrayal carries a price. The next few days passed in a blur of FBI interviews and legal meetings. I sat in Willie's office, surrounded by stacks of documents, when he dropped another bombshell. There's something else you need to see, Willie said, sliding a weathered envelope across his desk. Found this in your grandparents' old safety deposit box. Inside was a letter, dated just before my grandfather's death. As I read it, my hands started shaking. Is this what I think it is? I asked. Willie nodded. A trust agreement. Your grandfather never fully transferred the farm's ownership to Kerry's generation. He set up a family trust instead. Which means Kerry never had the right to sell it in the first place. I finished. The door opened and Marcus rushed in. You need to see this. Now. He pulled up a video on his phone, security footage from Lucky Sevens showing Kerry in what looked like a back room, shaking hands with several men in suits. Where did you get this? Willie asked, leaning forward. Anonymous email. But look at the timestamp. This was 3 months before Grandpa died. I felt sick. He was planning this even then. It gets worse, Marcus said. Look who else is in the frame. He zoomed in on a familiar face in the background. Aunt Audrey. She knew, I whispered. She knew everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Audrey's packing up their house. Says they're taking a trip. They're running, Marcus said. Willie was already dialing. Not if I can help it. He spoke quickly into the phone, then turned to us. FBI's on their way to Kerry's house, but we need to get there first. There might be documents they could destroy. We raced to Kerry's place, arriving just as Aunt Audrey was loading suitcases into her car. Going somewhere, I called out. She froze. Just taking a break. After everything that's happened. Save it, Marcus cut in. We saw the video, Audrey. From the casino. Her face hardened. You don't understand. We were trying to save the family. By stealing from it? I stepped closer. By betraying everything Grandpa built? Your grandfather was old-fashioned, she spat. Sitting on all that wealth, letting it rot in those fields. Kerry had vision. Vision? I pulled out the trust agreement. Is that why you helped him plan this before Grandpa even died? The sound of sirens cut through the air. Audrey's eyes went wild. She lunged for her car, but Marcus blocked her path. Move, she screamed. No, he said firmly. No more running. FBI agents swarmed the driveway. Through the chaos, I saw Kerry trying to slip out the back door. He locked eyes with me for a moment, then raised his hands as agents surrounded him. Mrs. Diaz, an agent approached Audrey. We need you to come with us. As they led them both away, Willie arrived with Mom and Reese. The trust agreement changes everything, Willie said. The farm was never legally Kerry's to sell. We can void all transactions immediately. Mom stared at her brother and sister-in-law being placed in separate cars. How long? She asked quietly. How long were they planning this? Based on the evidence, Willie sighed. Since before your father got sick, they were just waiting for the right moment. Reese hugged Mom tight. At least it's over now. But something still nagged at me. I walked into Kerry's house, now swarming with FBI agents. In his study, I noticed something odd, a family photo hanging slightly crooked. Behind it was a small safe. We'll need to get that opened, an agent said. Try 11/22/63, I suggested. Grandpa's birthday. Kerry always used it for everything. The safe clicked open. Inside were more documents, but one caught my eye. A letter from Grandpa to Kerry, never sent. My dear son, it began. I know what you're planning. Remember that true wealth isn't in money or land. It's in the trust we place in each other. Don't make me regret placing mine in you. He had known. All along he had known. An agent took the letter for evidence, but its words stayed with me. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the farm's distant fields. The same fields Grandpa had worked his whole life, the legacy he had tried to protect even from beyond the grave. You okay? Marcus asked, joining me. I nodded, watching another FBI car drive away, just thinking about Grandpa, about trust, and how we're going to rebuild it, all of it. The family reunion was in 2 days, usually a time for celebration. Now it would be something else, a reckoning, a new beginning. As we drove home, I thought about all the secrets still buried in those fields, and all the truths that were finally coming to light. The annual family reunion felt more like a trial than a celebration. Our usual spot in the farmhouse dining room was packed with relatives, all buzzing with questions about Kerry and Audrey's arrest. I stood at the head of the table, my evidence folder feeling heavier by the second. Before we start dinner, I announced, there's something you all need to know. Is this about Kerry? Uncle Pete called out. Because we've all seen the news. You've seen what they're willing to tell the public, I said, opening the folder. But there's more. Much more. Marcus dimmed the lights as I started the presentation we'd prepared. The first slide showed Kerry's casino photos. This isn't just about gambling debts, I explained. This is about a systematic betrayal that started years ago. Gasps filled the room as I showed the forged documents, the property transfers, the secret meetings. With each revelation, the weight of Kerry's betrayal seemed to press down on everyone. But why? Cousin Sara asked. We're family. Greed, Mom said quietly. Pure and simple. I clicked to the next slide, security footage showing Kerry and Audrey meeting with Lucky Seven's management. They were planning to turn the farm into a casino resort, I revealed. That's why they needed full control. They'd been working with Lucky Sevens for years. That's impossible, Uncle Pete protested. Kerry loved this place as much as any of us. Did he? I pulled out Grandpa's letter. Because Grandpa didn't think so. Read this. I passed the letter around. Watching their faces as they read Grandpa's warnings about Kerry was like watching their memories of him crumble in real time. There's more, Marcus added, standing up. Show them the trust agreement, Peyton. As I explained the legal implications, the room erupted in angry outbursts. So he never even had the right to sell? What about the money he borrowed from me? I knew something was off when he offered to invest my savings. Everyone, please, Mom called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. This isn't just about money. This is about trust, about family. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Aunt Audrey stood there, out on bail, mascara streaking down her face. "You're wrong about everything," she said, her voice shaking. "Kerry was trying to save this backwards family, drag you all into the modern world. By stealing from us, I challenged. By destroying our heritage? Heritage?" She laughed bitterly. "A bunch of cornfields and old memories. Kerry had vision. He saw potential. The only thing Kerry saw was dollar signs," Marcus shot back. "And you helped him every step of the way. Get out," Mom stood up, pointing at the door. "You're not family anymore." Audrey's face twisted. "Fine, but don't come crying when this precious farm of yours can't pay its bills. Kerry was right. You're all living in the past." "No," I said, pulling out one final document. "We're living in reality, and in reality the FBI just seized all your assets, including that vacation house in Florida you bought with stolen family money." The colour drained from her face. Without another word, she turned and fled. "There's one more thing," I continued, facing my stunned relatives. "Grandpa's trust agreement doesn't just protect the farm, it sets up a family council to manage it. Every adult member gets a vote on major decisions." "You mean we all get a say?" Cousin Sara asked. "Exactly. No more single person having total control. We do this together, or not at all." The room was quiet for a moment, then Uncle Pete stood up. "I vote we keep the farm. Rebuild it right this time." One by one, hands raised in agreement. Mum wiped tears from her eyes as the vote became unanimous. "Then it's settled," I said. "But there's work to do. Kerry's deals left us with legal battles ahead. We'll need everyone's help." "You've got it," voices called out from around the table. As the meeting turned to dinner, the mood shifted from anger to determination. Plates were passed, stories were shared, and plans were made. This was what family was supposed to be, not secret deals and betrayals, but open hearts and shared purpose. Later, as everyone helped clean up, Marcus pulled me aside. "Kerry's sentencing is next week," he said quietly. "You ready for that?" I looked around at my family, battered but unbroken, angry but united. More than ready. It's time for justice. Through the window, I could see the farm stretching out under the evening sky. The same view Grandpa must have had when he wrote that letter, knowing what was coming but believing in the strength of family to overcome it. He was right. We were stronger together, and no betrayal could break that bond. The courthouse felt colder than it should have for a summer morning. I sat in the front row between Mom and Marcus, watching Kerry in his orange jumpsuit as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. "Your Honour," Kerry's lawyer stood. "My client wishes to address the court." The judge nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Diaz." Kerry turned to face us, his face gaunt and aged. I never meant for things to go this far." "Objection," the prosecutor interrupted. "The defendant has shown no genuine remorse throughout these proceedings." "Overruled," the judge said. "Continue, Mr. Diaz." "Laurel," Kerry addressed Mom directly, his voice cracking. "You're my sister. You have to understand. I thought I could make things better for everyone." Mom stood up, pulling out a worn envelope. "May I speak, Your Honour?" The judge gestured for her to approach. "This is a letter from our father," Mom said, her voice steady, "found in his personal effects after Kerry's arrest. I'd like to read it." Kerry's face went pale as Mom unfolded the paper. "My dear children," she began, "if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. Kerry, son, I've watched you destroy yourself with greed, watched you plot against your own blood. But worse than the money you've stolen is the trust you've broken. A family's faith in each other is worth more than all the gold in the world." Kerry slumped in his chair as Mom continued. "Laurel, my daughter, stay strong. The farm isn't just land, it's the story of our family's struggles and triumphs." "And Peyton," Mum's voice caught. "My granddaughter, I've watched you grow into someone who understands what really matters. The farm will need your strength in the days to come. The courtroom was silent as Mom finished reading. Even the judge seemed moved. Mr. Diaz, the judge said finally, your crimes aren't just against property. They're against family, against trust, against the very bonds that hold communities together. Kerry nodded weakly. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to your family. The gavel struck, and Kerry's shoulders sagged. As officers led him away, he turned one last time. Peyton, he called out. I'm sorry, I really am. I met his eyes. So am I, Uncle Kerry. So am I. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Willie stepped in, handling their questions, while we made our way to the cars. But one voice cut through the chaos. You think this is over? Aunt Audrey stood at the bottom of the steps. Lucky Sevens doesn't just walk away. They'll find another way. Marcus stepped forward. Actually, they won't. Show her, Peyton. I pulled out my phone, displaying the morning's news headline. Lucky Sevens management indicted in multi-state fraud investigation. Kerry's testimony helped bring down their entire operation, I explained. The only one still standing against us is you, Aunt Audrey. And you're next. Her face contorted. You don't understand what you've done. There are people. Save it for your own trial, Willie interrupted, appearing beside us. Which, by the way, starts next month. As Audrey stormed off, Mum touched the locket around her neck, the one with Grandpa's picture inside. He'd be proud of you, she said softly. All of you. The farm's safe now, Marcus added. Really safe. Reese joined us, holding up her phone. Just got word from the bank. All Kerry's fraudulent transactions have been reversed. The farm's fully back in family trust control. Then, there's just one thing left to do, I said. That evening we gathered at the farm. The whole family came, aunts, uncles, cousins, even old Willie. We stood in the field where Grandpa had first broken ground 60 years ago. Mom pulled out one last surprise, Grandpa's old tin box. Inside was a stack of photos, documents, and a single brass key. He left this for whoever would protect the farm, she explained, holding out the key. Peyton, I think he meant it for you. As I took the key, its weight felt right somehow. Not a burden, but a responsibility. A trust. To family, Marcus raised his glass. To justice, Reese added. To the future, Mom said. I looked out over our land, not just acres and crops, but a legacy of love and determination. Kerry had tried to sell that legacy for cash, but some things, as Grandpa knew, are worth more than money. To truth, I said finally, and to all the stories these fields still have to tell. The sun set over our farm, our home, our heritage. And this time I knew it was safe in the hands of those who truly understood its worth. The morning dew still clung to the grass as I unlocked the farmhouse door. Grandpa's key turned smoothly in the lock, like it had been waiting for this moment. Inside, the renovation crew was already gathering, ready to restore what Kerry's neglect had damaged. Where do you want to start? Marcus asked, blueprint in hand. The kitchen, Mom said before I could answer. That's where everything important happens. As workers began carefully removing the old cabinets, we discovered something behind them, a hidden panel. Inside was a small safe, identical to the one we'd found in Kerry's study. Think the same combination will work? Reese asked. I tried Grandpa's birthday. The safe clicked open, revealing stacks of papers and a USB drive. Look at this, Marcus said, scanning the documents. Account numbers, transaction record. Kerry wasn't Grandpa's first problem. He caught Uncle Robert trying to sell the farm back in the 80s. That's why he created the trust, Mom realized. He knew the farm would always need protecting. Willie arrived as we were reviewing the files. Just came from Audrey's plea hearing. She's taking a deal. Full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. Did she say why? I asked. Why they really did it. Ambition, mostly. Kerry convinced her they could be something bigger than just farmers. But there's something else. Willie pulled out his phone. The FBI found offshore accounts. They weren't just planning a casino. They were going to build an entire resort complex. Would have destroyed every acre of farmland. The renovation crew called us over. They'd found something else in the walls. Hidden behind decades of wallpaper was a mural painted by my grandmother showing the farm in its early days. I remember this. Mom touched the faded paint. She painted it the year they finally paid off the original mortgage. As we carefully uncovered more of the mural, a knock at the door interrupted us. A young woman stood there looking uncertain. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said. "I'm Tony's daughter from Lucky Sevens. I wanted to apologize for everything my father and his partners did." I studied her face. She had her father's eyes, but none of his coldness. "Dad's going to prison for a long time," she continued, "but before they took him, he told me to give you this." She handed over a thick envelope. Inside were property deeds, all the parcels Kerry had secretly sold to Lucky Sevens shell companies. "They're signed back over to your family," she explained. "No strings attached. Dad said. He said some debts can't be paid with money." After she left, we stood in silence looking at the deeds. "It's really over," Reese whispered. "No," I said, watching the workers carefully restore Grandma's mural. "It's really beginning." The renovation continued throughout the day. Family members dropped by, each bringing something. Old photos, stories, pieces of our history we'd almost lost. Cousin Sara found Grandma's original recipe box hidden in the pantry. Uncle Pete discovered Grandpa's old ledgers in the barn, documenting every season's plantings. As the sun set, we gathered on the porch, surrounded by the evidence of our family's resilience. The farm stretched out before us, golden in the evening light. "You know what this place needs?" Marcus grinned. "A proper celebration." Mom smiled. "I think I know just the thing." She went inside and returned with Grandma's recipe box. "Who's ready to learn how to make her famous apple pie?" In the kitchen, now half renovated, we worked together, flour flying, laughter echoing off the walls. The recipe wasn't just ingredients, it was a piece of our heritage, preserved and passed down. "To think we almost lost all this," Reese said, crimping the pie crust. "But we didn't," I replied, "because some things can't be bought or sold. Some things can only be earned, protected, and shared." The pie came out perfect, just like Grandma used to make. As we sat around the old kitchen table sharing slices and stories, I felt Grandpa's presence in every bite. "You know what this farm really is?" Mom asked, looking around at all of us. "It's not just land or buildings. It's a promise, from one generation to the next. A promise to remember who we are and what matters most." I touched the key hanging around my neck, not just a piece of metal, but a symbol of that promise. Kerry had tried to break it. Audrey had tried to sell it. But in the end, the promise was stronger than their greed. Outside, the first stars appeared over fields that would always belong to our family. Not because of legal documents or trust agreements, but because we'd fought for them, together. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all.
The text message from Mom felt like a punch to the gut. "We need to talk. Family meeting tonight. Important news about the house. I'm Zoe." And that message marked the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Standing in my childhood home's kitchen 12 hours later, I wished I'd never shown up. "We're selling the house," Dad announced, his voice steady as if he were discussing the weather. "Caesar has an amazing business opportunity, and we're going to help him make it happen." The wooden spoon I'd been clutching, the same one I'd used to help Mom bake countless birthday cakes, clattered to the floor. "You're what?" Caesar leaned against the doorframe, that familiar smirk playing on his lips. "It's a game changer, sis. Premium coffee shops across the city. We're talking artisanal blends, prime locations." "Stop," I held up my hand. "You're selling our home, the house we grew up in, for coffee shops?" Mom stepped forward, her hands twisting her wedding ring like she always did when nervous. "Honey, we've discussed this thoroughly. Caesar has a solid business plan." "Solid?" I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "Like the food truck venture last year? Or the cryptocurrency investment that emptied his savings?" "That's not fair," Caesar pushed off the doorframe. This is different. I've got investors lined up. Who? The same guys who convinced you to sink 20 grand into that bogus real estate scheme? Zoe. Dad's voice carried that warning tone I remembered from childhood. Your brother has matured. We believe in his vision. I turned to the window, staring at the maple tree I'd climbed countless times. The treehouse Dad built us still clung to its branches, weathered but standing. What about my room, my dark room? All those photographs I've been storing here? We'll help you move everything, Mom offered quickly. You can store them at your apartment. My apartment that's barely big enough for me? I spun around. This house isn't just property, it's our history. The marks on the wall showing how tall we grew. The dent in the living room where Caesar crashed his skateboard. The garden where we buried Rusty. It's just a house, Caesar said dismissively. We need to think about the future, not cling to the past. Something snapped inside me. Just a house? This is where we learned to ride bikes, where we had every Christmas morning, where we held each other after Grandma died. But sure, let's trade all that for your latest get-rich-quick scheme. Zoe. Mom reached for my arm, but I pulled away. How much? I demanded. How much are you selling it for? Dad cleared his throat. The offer is $450. I'll buy it, I said instantly. I have savings. I can get a loan. We've already accepted their offer, Dad cut me off. The papers are signed. The room spun slightly. You didn't even give me a chance? Your own daughter? Honey, Mom's voice cracked. We didn't think. No, you didn't think. Not about me, anyway. I grabbed my purse from the counter. When do the new owners take possession? 30 days, Dad answered quietly. I nodded, fighting back tears. Perfect. Just enough time to watch another piece of my life get sacrificed for Caesar's dreams. Don't be dramatic, Caesar rolled his eyes. I'll make it up to you. When the business takes off, save it, I snapped. I don't want your promises or your overpriced coffee. I want my home. Zoe, please, Mom called as I headed for the door. Don't leave like this. I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. You know what hurts the most? You didn't even ask me. Didn't consider how this would affect me. It's always been about Caesar, his needs, his dreams, his mistakes. Well, congratulations. You finally managed to sell the last piece of my childhood to fund another one of his fantasies. That's not fair, Cesar protested. Life's not fair, I replied, meeting his eyes. But don't worry, big brother. I'm sure this time will be different. This time your brilliant plan will work out perfectly. And if it doesn't, well, there's always Mom and Dad's retirement fund to fall back on, right? I walked out before they could respond, slamming the door behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. Through the windshield, I could see the house next door, old Mrs. Patterson's place. The for sale sign had gone up last week. An idea began to form in my mind. Maybe I couldn't save my childhood home, but I could do something else. Something that would make them all understand exactly what they'd thrown away. I pulled out my phone and dialed my realtor's number. Hey, Sara, remember that property we discussed? The Patterson house? I want to make an offer. Today. You did what? Autumn nearly choked on her wine. We were sitting on my tiny apartment balcony, the evening air thick with summer heat and the weight of my decision. I bought Mrs. Patterson's house, I repeated, swirling the red wine in my glass. The offer was accepted this morning. Okay. Autumn set her glass down carefully. And you're planning to turn it into a women's retreat center? Just like that? Why not? It's perfect. 5 bedrooms, huge garden, that amazing sunroom. I leaned forward. Plus, it's right next door to my family's house. Every time Caesar looks out his precious coffee shop window, he'll see what I built from scratch. Girl, Autumn's eyes widened. That's either brilliant or crazy, maybe both. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom. I ignored it, like I had the previous dozen. You should see the property, I continued. I'm meeting the inspector tomorrow. Want to come? Obviously. Someone needs to make sure you don't completely lose your mind. She paused. Have you actually run the numbers on this? I pulled out my laptop. I've been working on nothing else for the past week. Look. As I showed her the spreadsheets, business plan, and market research, Autumn's skepticism slowly transformed into interest. There's nothing like this in the area, I explained. Women need a place to reset, to heal, to figure out their next steps. I can offer workshops, temporary housing, counseling services. Using your photography studio space, Autumn finished, catching on. Art therapy. Exactly. I closed the laptop. I've already talked to 3 potential investors. They love the concept. The sliding door creaked open, and my neighbor Rachel poked her head out. Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you really starting a women's retreat? That's the plan. Rachel stepped onto the balcony. My sister could have used something like that last year when she was going through her divorce. She ended up sleeping on my couch for 3 months because she had nowhere else to go. See? I gestured to Rachel. This is exactly why... My phone buzzed again, this time with Caesar's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. You'll have to talk to them eventually, Autumn said gently. No, I really don't. I stood up and walked to the railing. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine. Rachel cleared her throat. Well, if you need any help with the retreat, I'm a licensed social worker. I'd love to be involved. I turned back, surprised. Really? Absolutely. I can help set up support programs, maybe run some group sessions. The next morning, Autumn and I met the inspector at Mrs. Patterson's house. Standing in the grand entryway, with sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, I felt a surge of certainty. The bones are good, the inspector said, tapping the walls. You'll need to update the electrical in the east wing, and the roof needs work, but overall... A familiar voice cut through from outside. Zoe, what are you doing here? Caesar stood on the sidewalk, coffee cup in hand, staring up at the house. Buying property, I called back. Isn't that what our family does now? He jogged up the front steps. Come on, sis, don't be like this. Let's talk. About what? How you convinced Mom and Dad to sell my childhood home for your latest scheme? It's not a scheme, I've got everything planned out. Look. He reached for his phone. Save your pitch deck, I cut him off. I'm busy with my own business plan. His eyes narrowed. What business plan? You'll see soon enough. I turned to the inspector. Shall we continue the tour? Zoe, Caesar grabbed my arm. What are you up to? I yanked free. Creating something meaningful, something that actually helps people. But I wouldn't expect you to understand that concept. Autumn stepped between us. I think you should leave, Caesar. He backed away, hands raised. Fine, but this isn't over. No, I agreed, watching him retreat down the walkway. It's just beginning. Back inside, Autumn whistled low. Well, that was intense. Good, I said, running my hand along the vintage wallpaper. I want him to worry. I want them all to see what they threw away. Just remember, Autumn cautioned, the best revenge is living well. I smiled, already envisioning the transformation this house would undergo. Trust me, I plan to live extremely well, and I'm going to help other women do the same. The inspector cleared his throat. Shall we check out the second floor? As we climbed the grand staircase, I could feel the house's potential humming through my fingers on the banister. This wasn't just about getting back at my family anymore. This was about creating something bigger than myself, something lasting. And if it happened to make Caesar and my parents uncomfortable in the process, well, that was just karma doing its work. The contractor just quit. I slumped onto a dust-covered chair in what would eventually be the retreat's main office. Said the electrical work is more complicated than he thought? Rachel looked up from the stack of permit applications spread across the floor. That's the 3rd one this month. I know. I rubbed my temples, trying to ward off an approaching headache. The renovation was already 2 weeks behind schedule, and my savings were draining faster than expected. A knock on the front door echoed through the empty house. We're closed, I called out, not in the mood for another nosy neighbor asking about construction noise. I saw your sign outside, a voice responded. About the women's retreat? Rachel and I exchanged glances. I hadn't put up any sign yet. Curious, I walked to the door. A young woman stood on the porch, hugging herself despite the warm weather. Her eye makeup was smudged, and she carried a small duffel bag. "I'm Gemma," she said quickly, as if afraid I'd shut the door. "I know you're not open yet, but I saw the workers here, and I just really need a place to stay." "We're still under construction," I explained. "Nothing's ready. Please." Her voice cracked. "I can't go back to my apartment. He'll be waiting." The desperation in her eyes hit me like a physical force. I recognized that look, the same one I'd seen in the mirror countless times after my family's betrayal, but deeper, more urgent. "Come in," I heard myself say. "The kitchen's somewhat functional. We can at least make coffee." 20 minutes later, Gemma sat at our makeshift break table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug. "I left this morning while he was at work. 3 years of—" She trailed off. "I just couldn't do it anymore." Rachel, in full social worker mode, was already making calls to domestic violence shelters. I watched Gemma's hands trembling around the mug and made a decision. "The West Wing bedroom is finished," I said. "It's basic, but it has a bed and a working bathroom. You can stay there while we figure things out." Rachel shot me a warning look. "Zoe, we don't have the proper permits yet. Then we'll get them faster." I turned back to Gemma. No one should have to go back to a place that doesn't feel safe. Later that evening, as I was sorting through construction quotes, I heard voices outside. Through the window, I saw Caesar talking to one of the remaining contractors in the driveway. I stormed out. "What do you think you're doing?" Caesar spun around, all innocent smiles. "Just asking about the renovation timeline, trying to plan the coffee shop opening, you know? By interfering with my contractors?" "Interfering? I'm networking, sis. That's what successful business people do." "Get off my property." "Your property?" He laughed. "This whole thing is a joke. You don't know the first thing about running a business." "No?" I stepped closer. "At least I'm not burning through our parents' retirement fund on overpriced coffee beans." His smile faltered. "That's not—" "Leave. Now. And stop harassing my contractors." After he left, the contractor approached me awkwardly. "Look, maybe this job is more than we can handle. I'll pay you 15% above your quote," I said quickly. "Just please don't quit." He hesitated, then nodded. "Deal. But your brother mentioned some potential zoning issues." "I'll handle the zoning." I was already dialing Rachel's number as I walked back inside. I found Gemma in the kitchen, organizing our meager supply of dishes. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I want to help." She placed a mug in the cabinet. "This place, what you're doing here, it matters?" "My brother doesn't think so." I saw him outside. Gemma's voice hardened. "Men like that, they can't stand seeing women build something without them." I looked at her sharply. "You heard our conversation?" She nodded. "Reminded me of my ex. Always trying to tear down anything I was proud of." Something clicked in my mind. "Would you be interested in a job? We need someone to coordinate with contractors, manage supplies." "Really?" Her eyes lit up. "But I don't have experience." "You have perspective. That's worth more." That night, reviewing budget spreadsheets in my apartment, I realized Gemma's arrival had shifted something. This wasn't just about getting back at my family anymore. It was about creating a space where women like Gemma could rebuild their lives. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Please call us. We're worried about you." I typed back, "Don't be. I'm finally building something that matters." Then I turned back to my spreadsheets, determination renewed. Let Caesar try his sabotage. He had no idea how strong women could be when they stood together. "There's a zoning board meeting tomorrow," Mom announced, appearing at my construction site unannounced. "Your father and I will be there to support Caesar's permit application." I kept hammering, pretending the nail I was driving into the new bookshelf was my frustration. "Of course you will." "Zoe, please. This feud has to end." She stepped closer, dodging a pile of lumber. "We're still family." "Family?" The hammer slipped, nearly catching my thumb. "Is that what you call selling my childhood home without even consulting me?" The coffee shop will be amazing. Caesar's really thought it through this time. Mrs. Foster? Gemma appeared in the doorway. The inspector's here for the electrical certification. Mom's eyes narrowed. You already have people staying here? Without proper permits? She works here, I said firmly, and our permits are in order. Are they? She pulled out her phone. Because Caesar mentioned some concerns about— Stop. I set the hammer down hard. Just stop. Caesar's concerns are nothing but attempts to sabotage my project because he's worried about competition. Competition? This is a women's shelter. It's a retreat center, I corrected. And yes, competition. Because while he's selling overpriced lattes, I'll be actually helping people rebuild their lives. The inspector appeared behind Gemma, clipboard in hand. Mom took the hint and left, but not before saying, "We'll see you at the zoning meeting." The next day, I sat in the municipal building's stuffy meeting room, watching Caesar charm the zoning board with his polished presentation about revitalizing the neighborhood with his artisanal coffee empire. And as you can see, he gestured to his slides, the property's current residential zoning classification would be better served by converting to commercial use. I gripped my folder tighter, waiting for my turn. Mom and Dad sat in the front row, beaming at their golden boy. Finally, the board chairman called my name. I walked to the podium, spreading out my documentation. Board members, I'm here to oppose the rezoning application and present my own proposal for the adjacent property. I met Caesar's startled gaze. The neighborhood doesn't need another coffee shop. It needs a safe space for women in crisis. I detailed our plans: counseling services, temporary housing, job training programs. With each point, I saw the board members' interest grow. Furthermore, I continued, we've already secured partnerships with local mental health providers and employment agencies. Excuse me, Caesar interrupted, but my sister's project lacks proper licensing for residential facilities. Actually, I pulled out a document. We received our provisional license yesterday. Unlike some businesses, we did our homework before making promises. A murmur rippled through the room. Dad's smile had disappeared. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Foster, your rezoning application could impact both properties. Given the circumstances, we'll need to review. This is ridiculous! Caesar stood up. She's only doing this to spite me. Spite? I laughed. You really think everything revolves around you, don't you? Children, please. Mom started to rise. No, Mom. Let him speak. I turned to Caesar. Tell everyone how you convinced our parents to sell our home for your latest get-rich-quick scheme. Tell them about the contractors you tried to poach, the rumors you've been spreading about our permits. I was protecting our family's investment. Caesar's face reddened. This neighborhood needs upgrading, not some depressing shelter. It's not depressing, a voice called from the back. Gemma stood up, shoulders straight. It's hope. When I left my abusive ex, Zoe's retreat gave me a chance to start over. How many lattes can do that? Silence fell over the room. The chairman cleared his throat again. Given the complexity of these proposals, we'll need time to review both applications. Meeting adjourned. Outside, Dad caught up to me. Zoe, this vendetta has gone too far. Vendetta? I shook my head. Look around, Dad. See those women? I pointed to where Gemma stood with 2 other retreat residents. They're why I'm doing this. Not everything is about Caesar. But the family made its choice. I stepped back. Now I'm making mine, and unlike Caesar's coffee shop dreams, I'm actually helping people. Mom appeared at his side. Honey, please. Save it. I turned away. I'll see you at the next meeting. Bring your checkbook. Caesar might need more startup capital when this falls through. Walking to my car, I heard Gemma call out, "That was amazing!" I managed a smile, but my hands were shaking. Standing up to my family had cost more than I'd expected, but seeing their faces when Gemma spoke, that made it worth it. My phone buzzed with a text from Autumn. How'd it go? I typed back, "War declared, battle lines drawn, but we're winning." Because this wasn't just about zoning anymore. This was about proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well, it's living purposefully. Smile. The photographer from the local newspaper adjusted her camera. One more with the whole group. 3 months after the zoning battle, our retreat center was officially open. 20 women, including Gemma, gathered on the front steps. The renovated Victorian house gleamed behind us, its fresh paint and new sign catching the morning sun. "This is surreal," Rachel whispered beside me. "We're actually trending on social media." The article about our opening had gone viral overnight. "Local woman transforms family drama into haven for abuse survivors." The headline alone had brought in dozens of inquiries. "Ms. Foster?" A reporter raised his hand. "Your brother's coffee shop opens next door next week. Any comments?" "This isn't about my brother," I replied firmly. "It's about these women and their stories, like Maria here, who's starting her own business after taking our entrepreneurship workshop." Maria stepped forward, beaming. "The retreat gave me confidence to pursue my catering dreams. Next month, I'm cooking for my first corporate event." More questions followed, but movement across the street caught my eye. Mom stood on our old house's porch, watching. She'd aged somehow in these past months, her hair grayer, her shoulders more stooped. "Excuse me," I said to the reporters. "Gemma, could you handle the rest of the questions?" Crossing the street felt like crossing an ocean. Mom didn't move as I approached. "The house looks beautiful," she said quietly. "You've done amazing work." "Thanks." I stood awkwardly, hands in my pockets. "How's Caesar's shop coming along?" She hesitated. "Having some supplier issues. The premium beans he ordered didn't arrive." "Of course they didn't." "Zoe, please." She turned to face me. "I know we hurt you, but seeing what you've built here, maybe it was meant to be this way." "Meant to be?" I laughed. "Mom, you sold my home without even talking to me. And look what you did with that pain." She gestured to the retreat. "You turned it into something beautiful, something meaningful." Before I could respond, Gemma called from across the street. "Zoe, the TV crew is here." "TV crew?" Mom's eyes widened. "Local news," I explained. "They're doing a feature on women-owned businesses in the area." "That's wonderful." She paused. "Caesar tried to get them interested in the coffee shop, but what?" "They said artisanal coffee wasn't newsworthy enough." I bit back a smile. "I should go." "Wait," Mom grabbed my arm. "There's something you should know. Your father and we're worried about Caesar's finances. The shop's renovations cost more than expected and—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "I don't want to know. Whatever hole he's dug himself into, it's not my problem." Back at the retreat, the TV crew was setting up in our newly finished community room. Women gathered around, sharing stories of how they'd found us. "The photography classes helped me see beauty again," one said into the microphone. "I learned to trust myself here," added another. "Gemma, now our official program coordinator, organized everyone for the segment." "Zoe, they want to interview you last. Something about saving the best for final cut." The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Diana, sat across from me. "Your story is compelling," she said. "Converting family conflict into community support. Mind if we dig deeper?" "Actually, I do." I straightened my shoulders. "The conflict that led me here isn't the story. These women are. Their resilience, their courage to start over. That's what matters." Diana smiled. "Even better. Tell me about them." For the next hour, I shared our success stories. The domestic violence survivor who became a counselor, the divorced mother who started her own online business, the elderly woman who found community after losing her husband. "One last question," Diana said. "Your brother's coffee shop opens next door soon. Any message for him?" I looked out the window at our old house, at Mom still standing on the porch. "Just this. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed leads you to what you were meant to do all along." After the crews left, Gemma brought me coffee, not from an artisanal shop, but our simple kitchen machine. "The waiting list is up to 30 women now," she said. "We might need to think about expanding." "Expanding?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "The property 2 doors down just went up for sale." Her eyes sparkled. "Just saying." I watched the sunset paint our retreat in golden light, thinking about Mom's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was meant to be. My phone buzzed, a text from Autumn. "Just saw the news crew. You're going to be famous." I typed back, Not me, the retreat, the women, their stories. Because that's what mattered now. Not revenge, not family drama, but the lives we were helping rebuild, one day at a time. Though I had to admit, the fact that we were thriving while Caesar struggled did feel a little like karma. The pounding on my door at 2 a.m. could only mean trouble. I opened it to find Dad, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Caesar's in trouble," he said without preamble. "Big trouble." "When isn't he?" I started to close the door, but Dad's next words froze me. He used the coffee shop as collateral for a loan, a high-interest loan from people you don't want to owe money to. Of course he did. I leaned against the doorframe. How much? 200,000. The number hit like a physical blow. "Tell me you and Mom didn't co-sign." His silence was answer enough. "Jesus, Dad." I ran my hands through my hair. "The house money wasn't enough? You had to risk everything else too?" "He had a plan. He always has a plan," I was shouting now, not caring about my neighbors. "And you always fall for it." "The suppliers backed out," Dad continued. "The equipment costs doubled. He got desperate. And now what? You want me to help clean up his mess? Again?" A text lit up my phone. "Gemma. Emergency at the retreat. Pipe burst in the east wing." "I have to go," I told Dad. "Real problems to solve." "Zoe, please. These aren't nice people he borrowed from. They're coming tomorrow for their first payment." Then he better start brewing a lot of coffee. At the retreat, water was pouring through the ceiling. Gemma and 3 residents were already moving furniture, while Rachel coordinated with an emergency plumber on the phone. "Second floor bathroom," Gemma explained, handing me a bucket. "The plumber's on his way." We worked through the night, salvaging what we could. By dawn, the leak was fixed, but the damage was extensive. "Insurance should cover it," Rachel said, surveying the wet walls. "But we'll need to relocate the women in those rooms temporarily." My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Calls from Mom, texts from Dad. Finally, one from Caesar. "I screwed up. Bad. Please help." "Everything okay?" Gemma asked, noticing my expression. "Family drama." I showed her the text. "Caesar got involved with loan sharks." "Shit." She whistled low. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing. He made his bed." "Zoe!" Mom's voice rang through the retreat's front hall. She hurried in, mascara streaked down her face. "They're at the coffee shop, right now. They're taking everything." I followed her next door. Through the coffee shop's windows, I could see men in dark suits removing equipment while Caesar argued frantically. "You can't do this," he was saying as we entered. "I just need more time." "Time's up," one of the men said calmly. Should have read the contract better. "I'll call the police," Mom threatened. "Go ahead." The man smiled. "Show them the loan documents you all signed." I watched my brother's dream being dismantled piece by piece. Part of me felt satisfaction, karma finally catching up. But another part remembered the little boy who used to protect me from playground bullies. "Wait," I heard myself say. "What would it take to stop this, right now?" The man turned. "First payment's 50 grand. Due now." "I can have it in an hour," I said, "if you leave the equipment." Everyone stared at me. "Sis," Cesar's voice cracked, "you don't have to—" "Shut up," I turned to the man. "Deal?" He nodded. 1 hour. At the bank, withdrawing nearly half my emergency fund, Caesar wouldn't look at me. "This is a loan," I said firmly, "with real paperwork and legal terms. You'll pay me back every cent." "I know." He swallowed hard. "I don't deserve—" "No, you don't. But Mom and Dad don't deserve to lose everything because of you, again." "The coffee shop's failing anyway," he admitted. "Even with all the equipment, I can't compete with the chains." "Then sell it. Pay off your debts. Get a real job." Back at the retreat, Gemma was organizing a cleanup crew for the water damage. She took one look at my face and pulled me aside. "You helped him, didn't you?" I nodded. "After everything he did? I didn't do it for him." I watched the women working together, supporting each other. "I did it because that's what we're about here, helping people find better ways forward, even if those people sometimes don't deserve it." "You're a better person than me," Gemma said. "No." I smiled tiredly. just finally learning the difference between revenge and redemption. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. Thank you for everything. I didn't respond. Some wounds were still too fresh, some bridges still too fragile. But maybe, just maybe, this was a start toward something new. Come on, Gemma tugged my arm. These walls won't dry themselves. And so I turned back to the work that mattered, leaving Caesar to figure out his own path forward. For once, I had nothing left to prove. The Governor's Office of Women's Initiatives wants to use our retreat as a model for the state program, Rachel announced, bursting into my office. They're sending a representative next week. 6 months after the coffee shop disaster, our retreat had become more successful than I'd ever imagined. Cesar had sold his failed business to a local restaurant group, and now I sat watching moving trucks pack up the last of his equipment. Earth to Zoe? Rachel waved her hand in front of my face. Did you hear what I said? State funding. Sorry, yes. I turned back to my desk. It's just weird, watching them dismantle everything he worked for. You mean everything he stole from your childhood home for? Yeah. I stood up. Speaking of which, where are we on the expansion plans? Rachel spread out blueprints across my desk. The bank approved our loan yesterday. We can start renovations on the new property next month. The front door chime rang, and Gemma's voice carried up the stairs. Zoe, your mother's here! Mom stood in the entrance hall, clutching her purse like a shield. The moving trucks. She gestured next door. I just couldn't watch. He's fine, Mom. The restaurant group hired him as a manager. I know. She looked around the retreat's newly renovated interior. This place... It's amazing, honey. The women I see coming and going, their faces when they leave. You've created something special. Thanks. I hesitated. Would you like a tour? We've made some changes since you were here last. As we walked through the house, Mom stopped at our wall of success stories, photos of women who'd graduated from our program, starting new lives. Is that Maria? She pointed to a picture of our former resident cutting a ribbon at her new catering business. She's handling all our event food now, I said proudly, and teaching cooking classes twice a week. Zoe, Gemma called from the office. The local business association is on the phone. They want you to speak at their annual dinner. Mom smiled. You're becoming quite the celebrity. Not me. The retreat. The women. I paused at the window overlooking our garden, where residents were tending the vegetable beds. Everything that happened, losing the house, Caesar's schemes, it led to this, to helping people find their strength. I'm sorry, Mom said suddenly, for not seeing it sooner. Your father and I, we were so focused on helping Caesar that we couldn't see how much we were hurting you. Mom. No, let me finish. She touched my arm. Watching you build this place, seeing the lives you're changing, you're the strong one. You always were. The front door chimed again. Caesar walked in looking different in his restaurant manager uniform. Hey, he said awkwardly. Last of the equipment's gone. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. First payment, as promised. I took the envelope. You're really doing it? Working a regular job? Turns out I'm pretty good at managing other people's businesses. He attempted a smile. Better than running my own anyway. Caesar's been volunteering with our job training program, Gemma added, appearing with a stack of files. Teaching business basics, what not to do. Really? I looked at my brother with new eyes. Figured I owed you more than just money. He shrugged. These women, their stories, it puts things in perspective, you know? The doorbell chimed once more. Diana, the TV reporter, strode in with a camera crew. Ready for the follow-up piece? She asked. The local success story expands statewide angle is gold. Actually, I said, I have a better story. About redemption, family, and finding purpose in unexpected places. I looked at Mom and Caesar. Would you like to be part of it? The resulting segment went viral faster than the first. Family Feud transforms into community victory became our new narrative. Footage of Caesar teaching business classes, Mom organizing fundraisers, and our expanding programs painted a picture of healing that resonated far beyond our local community. That evening, standing in the garden with Autumn, I watched the sunset paint the old Victorian in golden light. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked. "When you first bought the place?" "Never." I smiled as a group of residents walked past, laughing together. I wanted revenge. Instead, I found purpose. "And now you're changing lives." "We're changing lives," I corrected. "All of us." My phone buzzed. An email from the governor's office confirming their visit. Below it, a text from Dad. "Proud of you, sweetheart. Always have been." I looked at our retreat, then at my old home next door. The pain of losing it had faded, replaced by something stronger. The knowledge that sometimes our greatest losses lead to our most important discoveries. "Come on," I told Autumn. "We've got work to do." Because this wasn't just my story anymore. It belonged to every woman who walked through our doors, seeking a new beginning. And somehow, that was better than any revenge I could have planned. "Ready?" Gemma stood beside me at the front door of my childhood home. Through the window, I could see my family gathered in the living room. Not really. I gripped the small box in my hands tighter. But it's time. Inside, Mom was arranging cookies on a plate while Dad and Caesar hung a congratulations banner. The governor's award for community excellence sat on the mantel, right where my childhood photos used to be. "There's our woman of the hour," Dad called out. "The banner's crooked," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Some things never change," Mom laughed. "Remember when we hung your graduation banner?" "I remember." I set the box on the coffee table. "That's actually why I wanted everyone here today." Autumn slipped in behind us, camera ready. She'd been documenting the retreat's journey from the start. "Before we celebrate the award," I began, "I need to return something." I opened the box, revealing a stack of old photographs. "These are all the pictures I took from the house before you sold it. I've been holding on to them like weapons." Caesar shifted uncomfortably. "Sis." "Let me finish." I pulled out the first photo. All of us at the beach, much younger, much happier. "I've been so angry about losing this house that I forgot what made it special wasn't the building. It was us, even when we were mess." Mom wiped her eyes. "We were quite a mess, weren't we?" "Still are," I smiled. "But different now." I handed each of them a photo. To Mom, the picture of us baking Christmas cookies. To Dad, the one of him building our treehouse. To Cesar, a shot of him teaching me to ride a bike. "The retreat taught me something," I continued. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means building something new from what's left." "Speaking of building," Gemma interjected, right on cue. "Should we tell them?" I nodded. The state funding came through. We're opening 3 new retreat locations. 3? Caesar's eyes widened. "That's amazing." "And," I took a deep breath, "we want to use the old coffee shop space for our first youth center. For teenage girls who need support before crisis hits." The room fell silent. The coffee shop space, still owned by our parents, had been sitting empty since Caesar's business failed. "It's yours," Dad said immediately. "No." I shook my head. "Not given, bought. Properly this time. I have the paperwork ready." Mom started to protest, but I held up my hand. "This needs to be business, not family. We've learned that lesson, right?" Caesar laughed. "Yeah, the hard way. But," I added, "I would like my family involved. Mom, your fundraising skills are incredible. Dad, we need someone to oversee the renovation. And Caesar, let me guess, business classes on what not to do. Actually, we need a proper operations manager, someone who's learned from their mistakes and knows how to help others avoid them." His jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Professional salary, benefits, the works. Rachel's drawn up a contract." I met his eyes. "Think you can handle working for your little sister?" "I'd be honored." His voice cracked slightly. Autumn snapped pictures as we hugged, capturing the moment our family's healing became official. Later, standing in what would become the youth center, I found the old height marks on the wall, still visible under layers of paint. My fingers traced the notches, Caesar's growth spurts, my steady climb. "Keep them," Mom said behind me. "Let the girls add their own marks. Show them how growth happens slowly, but it happens." "Like us?" She hugged me. Like us. Outside, the retreat's lights glowed warmly in the dusk. Women moved between buildings, carrying books, laptops, dreams. In the garden, a new resident was crying on Gemma's shoulder while Rachel sat nearby, ready to help plan next steps. "You did it," Autumn said, reviewing her photos. "You turned pain into purpose." "We did it," I corrected. "All of us." My phone buzzed. Another girl seeking shelter. Another story waiting to be rewritten. As I read the message, I realized something. The house I'd fought so hard to save had given me something far more valuable than memories. It had given me a mission. "Ready to change another life?" Gemma called out. "Always," I replied, heading back to the retreat. Behind me, my family began planning the youth center renovation, their voices mixing with the sounds of women rebuilding their lives. This wasn't the revenge I'd planned. It was better. Because sometimes the best way to heal old wounds isn't to get even, but to get better. To build something so beautiful from the ashes of what was lost that even those who hurt you want to be part of it. And that's a victory sweeter than any revenge could ever be.
The crystal champagne flute shattered in my grip, sending shards of glass and bubbling liquid across the marble floor of our family's estate. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on my sister Nicole's beaming face as she stood in the centre of what was supposed to be my 30th birthday celebration. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, and Leon's the father. "My name is Saij, and this is how my perfect life crumbled in exactly 23 words. Leon, my fiancé of 2 years, stood frozen near the French doors, his face drained of colour. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw everything I needed to know in that single glance. "Saij, He started, taking a step toward me. I raised my hand, silencing him. The cut on my palm from the broken glass was starting to sting, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow feeling spreading through my chest. "How long?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos in my head. Nicole's smile faltered slightly. "Does it matter?" "How long?" Christine, my best friend since college, appeared at my side with a napkin for my bleeding hand. "Maybe we should take this somewhere private," she whispered. "No," I said loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "I think this is exactly the right place for this conversation. After all, what's a birthday party without some entertainment?" The gathered guests, friends, family, business associates, shifted uncomfortably. Some were already edging toward the exits, while others seemed rooted to the spot, unable to look away from the unfolding drama. 6 months, Leon finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 6 months ago, I had been in Europe, overseeing the expansion of our family's business. 6 months of late-night calls where Leon claimed to be too busy to talk long. 6 months of Nicole insisting she was taking care of things at home. "Saij, we never meant to hurt you." Nicole stepped closer, reaching for my arm. "It just happened." I jerked away from her touch. "Just happened. Like accidentally burning dinner, or forgetting to pay a bill. That kind of just happened." "You were always gone," Leon interjected, finding his voice. "The business took up all your time, and Nicole was here, and we—" "And you what?" I turned to face him, my voice razor-sharp. "You thought you'd fuck my sister while I was building our future." Several gasps echoed through the room. "Good. Let them all witness this." "I think everyone should leave," Christine announced, taking charge of the situation. She began ushering guests toward the door, while I remained rooted to my spot, staring at the 2 people I had trusted most in the world. "I'll move out tomorrow," Leon offered, as if he was doing me a favor. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, a strange, hollow sound that made both Leon and Nicole flinch. "No need," I said, reaching for a fresh glass of champagne from a nearby server's tray. "This is still my party, after all." I raised the glass high, drawing everyone's attention. "A toast," I announced, my voice carrying across the now half-empty room. "To new beginnings, to truth, to family." I locked eyes with Nicole. "To karma." I drained the glass in one go, set it down with deliberate care, and walked toward the grand staircase. As I reached the first step, I turned back to face them one last time. "Oh, and Nicole," I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." Later that night, after the last guest had gone and the house had fallen silent, I sat at my desk with my laptop open, accessing files I'd hoped I'd never need to use. My hand, now properly bandaged thanks to Christine, hovered over the keyboard. A soft knock at the door made me look up. Christine stood there, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" I turned back to my screen where financial records and legal documents waited for my attention. "I'm going to remind them both that karma isn't just a word you throw around at yoga class." "Sage." "Don't worry, Christine. I'm not going to do anything crazy." I closed the laptop and stood up. "I'm just going to do what I do best, take care of business." As Christine left, I caught my reflection in the window. Behind the hurt and anger, I saw something else in my eyes. Determination. They thought they knew me, thought they could predict how I'd react. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Harvey's office always smelled like old leather and expensive coffee. I sat across from him, sliding a folder across his polished desk, while he reviewed the documents inside with raised eyebrows. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Sage?" He looked up at me over his reading glasses. "Once we set these wheels in motion." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," I replied, crossing my legs. "Do you have the power of attorney papers ready?" He nodded, pulling out another set of documents. "Your father signed these over to you years ago. With these, you have complete control over the family's business interests." He paused, studying my face. "Does Nicole know about these?" My dear sister was always more interested in spending money than learning how it was made. I took the papers, scanning them quickly. She has no idea. My phone buzzed for the 20th time that morning. Leon's name flashed across the screen again. I declined the call without hesitation. "He's been trying to reach you?" Harvey asked, though it wasn't really a question. "They both have. Apparently the gravity of their situation is finally sinking in." I allowed myself a small smile. Amazing how quickly priorities change when you realize you've betrayed the person who controls your trust fund. Harvey leaned back in his chair, concern evident in his expression. "You know, revenge isn't always the answer, Sage." "This isn't just about revenge, Harvey. This is about consequences." I stood up and walked to his window, looking out over the city. They made their choices. Now they get to live with them. A knock at the door interrupted us. Harvey's assistant poked her head in. "Mr. Schmidt, Ms. Nicole is here. She's quite insistent about speaking with you." I turned around, meeting Harvey's questioning look. "Perfect timing. Let her in." Nicole burst through the door seconds later, her designer handbag swinging wildly. "Sage, I've been trying to reach you for days." She stopped short when she saw the papers spread across Harvey's desk. "What's going on?" "Sister dear," I said, my voice honey-sweet. "I was just finishing up some business. You remember business, right? That thing that pays for your shopping sprees and yoga retreats?" "Cut the crap, Sage." Nicole's face flushed. "Leon told me you've frozen all the accounts. Even my personal one. You can't do that." "Actually, I can. And I did." I picked up one of the documents and held it out to her. "Maybe if you'd paid attention during all those family meetings instead of texting under the table, you'd know about this little thing called power of attorney." Nicole snatched the paper, her eyes widening as she read. This isn't fair. Daddy would never..." "Daddy did. Years ago." I took the paper back from her trembling hands. He knew exactly what he was doing when he put me in charge. "I'm pregnant, Sage. You can't just cut me off." Tears welled up in her eyes. "What about the baby?" "Ah, yes, my future niece or nephew." I sat back down, crossing my legs. "Don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. You'll receive a modest monthly allowance, enough to cover basic necessities. No more designer shopping sprees, though. I hear Target has lovely maternity wear." Nicole's face crumpled. "Why are you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" I stood up slowly, my calm facade cracking slightly. You want to talk about cruel? How about sleeping with your sister's fiancé? How about announcing your pregnancy at my birthday party? That kind of cruel? I love him, she whispered. And I loved you both. I gathered my papers, sliding them into my briefcase. Harvey, please make sure everything is filed today. I'll be leaving town tomorrow. Leaving? Nicole grabbed my arm. You can't leave. Where are you going? I gently removed her hand. That's the beauty of it, Nicole. I don't have to tell you anything anymore. As I walked to the door, I paused and turned back. Oh, and you might want to let Leon know that his position at the company has been terminated. His severance package should cover a few months' rent on a modest apartment. I hear the east side of town is quite affordable. I left Nicole standing there, her mouth open in shock. In the elevator, I finally allowed myself to shake just for a moment. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Christine. Everything okay? She asked when I answered. It's done, I replied, stepping out into the lobby. Did you get the apartment set up? All ready for you. Are you sure about this? I pushed through the revolving doors into the bright sunshine. Absolutely. It's time for a fresh start. Back home, I placed my letter on the dining room table where they couldn't miss it. As I packed the last of my essential belongings, I could hear Leon's car pulling into the driveway. Perfect timing. He could read it with Nicole. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about walking away and taking everything they took for granted with you. Christine's guest room had become my sanctuary over the past week. The sound of her coffee maker gurgling to life each morning was a welcome change from the deafening silence of my old house. I sat at her kitchen island, scrolling through the dozens of missed calls and messages on my phone. They're still trying to reach you. Christine placed a steaming mug in front of me. 17 calls from Leon yesterday alone. I showed her the screen. And Nicole's been emailing Harvey non-stop. Have you read any of them? Don't need to. I took a sip of coffee. Harvey forwards me the important bits. Apparently Leon tried to access his corporate credit cards yesterday. That must have been a fun surprise at the gas station. Christine's phone chimed. She glanced at it and grimaced. Nicole's asking me where you are. Again. Tell her I moved to Tibet to become a monk, I suggested, managing a small smile. Saj. Christine set her phone down. You know you'll have to face them eventually. Before I could respond, my laptop pinged with a new email notification. The sender's name made my heart skip a beat. Marcus Stewart, CEO of our biggest competitor. What is it? Christine asked, noticing my expression. I turned the screen toward her. Remember how Leon was handling our merger negotiations? Yeah. Turns out he'd been feeding information to Stewart Industries for months. I opened the email, scanning its contents. Marcus is offering to tell me everything in exchange for a meeting. That son of a... Christine stopped herself. What are you going to do? I closed the laptop with a decisive click. I'm going to meet him. The restaurant Marcus chose was exactly what you'd expect from a CEO. Expensive, discreet, and with private booths perfect for sensitive conversations. He stood as I approached, offering his hand. Seiji, thank you for coming. I sat down without taking his hand. Let's skip the pleasantries, Marcus. What did Leon tell you? He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Everything. Profit margins, expansion plans, client lists. He was quite thorough. I flipped through the documents, each page making my blood boil more. Why are you showing me this? Because I have a daughter, Marcus leaned back, studying me. And if someone did to her what your sister and Leon did to you... Well, let's just say I understand why you're doing what you're doing. This isn't about revenge, I started. Of course it is, he interrupted. But it's also about business. And that's why I'm here. He pulled out another document. I want to make you an offer. Later that evening, I returned to Christine's place to find her pacing the living room. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours. Meeting ran long, I said, dropping my bag. What's wrong? Nicole showed up here looking for you. She was hysterical, Saja. Leon lost their apartment. Something about the lease being in your name. Imagine that. I kicked off my heels. She's pregnant, Saja. Where are they supposed to go? They're adults, Christine. They'll figure it out. I pulled out Marcus's offer letter. Besides, I have bigger things to worry about. Christine read the letter, her eyes widening. Holy shit. Are you going to accept? I haven't decided yet. I walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. It would be the smart business move. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Remember that summer in Cape Cod, the message read. When you made me promise to always protect you. I kept that promise until Leon. I'm so sorry, sis. I deleted the message, but the words had already burned themselves into my memory. That summer, the last one before our parents' divorce, before everything changed, felt like a lifetime ago. Say? Christine's voice pulled me back. You okay? I need to make some calls, I said, heading for my room. And Christine, if Nicole shows up again, tell her I moved to Mars. Alone in my room, I pulled out my laptop and opened a new email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I considered my next move. The merger deal with Stewart Industries would devastate Leon's career prospects. No company would touch him after this scandal broke. And Nicole? Well, she'd learned that trust funds don't last forever. As I typed my response to Marcus, another text came through. Please, Sage. We need to talk. L. I blocked the number and hit send on the email. Some conversations weren't worth having anymore. Some betrayals cut too deep for words to fix. Besides, I had a merger to plan. The boardroom felt colder than I remembered. Harvey sat beside me as we watched the quarterly report scroll across the projector screen. The numbers weren't good. As you can see, Harvey pointed to a particularly alarming graph. Without Leon's client relationships, we've lost significant ground in the Asian market. Those were my father's clients first, I reminded him, before he handed them over to Leon. Yes, but... Harvey was interrupted by my phone buzzing. Another text from Nicole. The baby's kicking. Please call me. I switched the phone off and turned back to Harvey. What are our options? We need someone managing those accounts personally, someone the clients trust. He gave me a meaningful look. Someone like you. Before I could respond, my assistant Julia burst into the room. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Leon is in the lobby. He's refusing to leave until he speaks with you. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. Well then, let's not keep him waiting. The elevator ride down felt eternal. When the doors opened, I saw him immediately, wearing the same suit he'd worn to countless client meetings, but looking somehow diminished. You can't ignore me forever, Sage, he said as I approached. I'm not ignoring you, Leon. I'm moving on. There's a difference. I gestured to the seating area. But since you're here, let's talk. We sat across from each other, the ghost of our past hanging between us. The merger with Stewart Industries, he started. You can't do this. Actually, I can. And I am. I crossed my legs, watching him squirm. Marcus was very interested in the information you shared with him, though I suspect you didn't mean for him to share it with me. Leon's face paled. I can explain. Save it. I held up my hand. You didn't come here about the merger. Why are you really here? He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Nicole's not doing well, Sage. The stress. The doctor says it's not good for the baby. We're staying in a motel off Highway 9. And we need help. Please. His eyes met mine, pleading. Whatever you think of me, this is your niece or nephew we're talking about. I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. You know what I remember, Leon? I remember planning our wedding, picking out china patterns while you were fucking my sister, discussing baby names while you were starting your own family behind my back. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I turned to face him. Explain it to me. Help me understand how you could do this to someone you claim to love. I did love you. He stood up, running his hands through his hair. But you were always working, always focused on the business. Nicole was there. She understood. Understood what? That my hard work paid for her lifestyle? For your fancy suits? I laughed bitterly. Get out, Leon. And tell Nicole to stop texting me about the baby. I'm not interested in playing happy families. As security escorted him out, Christine appeared by my side. That looked intense. Nothing I couldn't handle. I checked my watch. Ready for lunch? At our usual cafe, Christine pushed her salad around her plate. Nicole called me this morning. Of course she did. She's scared, Sage. They're running out of money and the motel is exactly what they deserve. I set down my fork. Why does everyone expect me to feel sorry for them? Because you're better than this, Christine said quietly. Because the Sage I know wouldn't let her sister live in a motel, pregnant or not. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from Marcus. The merger details were finalized. One signature, and Leon's career would be effectively over. The Sage you knew died at that birthday party, I said, picking up my phone. Besides, I have a company to run. Back at the office, Harvey was waiting with more bad news. 3 more clients have pulled their accounts. They're asking for Leon specifically. I sank into my chair, the weight of everything finally hitting me. He built relationships with them for years. Of course they want him. There might be a way to salvage this, Harvey suggested carefully. If we brought Leon back, just for the Asian market. No, I stood up abruptly. I'll handle it myself. Book me on the next flight to Singapore. As I packed up my desk, a photo fell from one of the folders, Nicole and me at her college graduation, both smiling, both happy, before everything fell apart. My phone buzzed one last time. Doctor says it's a girl. Thought you should know. N. I slipped the photo back into the folder and grabbed my coat. Some bridges, once burned, leave nothing but ashes. And I was done trying to rebuild from ruins. Singapore's heat hit me like a wall as I stepped out of the taxi. 3 days of back-to-back meetings had left me exhausted, but I'd managed to salvage most of our Asian partnerships. My phone rang as I entered the hotel lobby. Christine. You need to come home, she said without preamble. Now. I have 2 more meetings tomorrow. Nicole's in the hospital. The world tilted slightly. What happened? Complications with the pregnancy. She's stable, but... Christine paused. She's asking for you. I sat down heavily in one of the lobby's plush chairs. I can't just drop everything and... Damn it, Sage! Christine's voice cracked. This isn't about your revenge anymore. This is about your sister and your niece. How far are you willing to take this? Before I could respond, another call beeped through. Harvey. I have to go, I told Christine. I'll think about it. Harvey's news wasn't any better. Marcus Stewart is backing out of the merger. What? Why? He says the negative publicity isn't worth it. Apparently someone leaked the story about Leon's involvement to the press. It's being spun as corporate espionage. I pressed my fingers to my temples. How bad is it? Bad enough that our stock dropped 12 points this morning. He sighed. Seg, we need to consider damage control. 4 hours later, I was on a plane back home, my head spinning with possibilities. The merger was supposed to be my masterstroke, the final nail in Leon's professional coffin. Instead, it had backfired spectacularly. I found Christine waiting at the airport. Before you ask, Nicole's condition has stabilized, she said as we walked to her car. But there's something else you need to know. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a social media post from Nicole. To everyone asking about the scandal. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I hurt my sister. But destroying our family's legacy isn't the answer. Sage, if you're reading this, please remember who we used to be. Remember Cape Cod. She posted that from her hospital bed, Christine said quietly. It's gone viral. I handed the phone back, my hands shaking slightly. Take me to the hospital. The maternity ward was quiet when we arrived. Leon was slumped in a chair outside Nicole's room, his suit wrinkled, his eyes red. He straightened when he saw me. Saja, don't. I held up my hand. Is she awake? He nodded, stepping aside. Nicole looked small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her. She opened her eyes as I approached. You came, she whispered. Christine can be very persuasive. I sat in the chair beside her bed. How are you feeling? Like karma finally caught up with me. She tried to smile, but it came out more like a grimace. The baby. They say she's under stress. I looked at the monitors, at the steady heartbeat of my unborn niece. Why did you post that message? Because someone had to stop this war. Nicole reached for my hand. I let her take it. We're destroying everything Dad built, Sage. Is that what you want? What I wanted was a sister I could trust, a fiancé who loved me. I pulled my hand away. What I wanted doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. She struggled to sit up. Remember what Mum used to say? Family is family even when they're wrong. Mum left us, I reminded her. But we stayed together. Nicole's eyes filled with tears. Until now. A nurse entered, checking the monitors. Blood pressure's still high, she murmured. You need to rest. I stood up. I should go. Sage, wait! Nicole grabbed my wrist. The company. Dad's legacy. It needs both of us. You know that. Outside the room, Christine was waiting. Well? Call Harvey, I said, pulling out my phone. Tell him to draft a new proposal. Shared leadership of the Asian division. Contingent on certain conditions. You're going to work with Leon? No. I looked back at Nicole's room. I'm going to work with my sister. Leon's on his own. As we walked out of the hospital, my phone buzzed with a text from Harvey. Making things right doesn't make you weak. It makes you worthy of the trust your father placed in you. I looked up at the night sky, remembering Cape Cod, remembering promises made and broken. Maybe it was time to make new ones. Christine, I said, let's go get a drink. I need to tell you about my new business plan. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's finding the strength to rebuild what's broken, not for others, but for yourself. The conference room buzzed with tension as I laid out the new contracts. Nicole sat across from me, her baby bump now visible beneath her maternity dress. Harvey stood at the head of the table mediating what had become our most important family meeting. The terms are simple, I said, sliding the papers toward Nicole. You get control of the domestic operations. I maintain the Asian market and international expansion. We make decisions about the company's future together. Nicole skimmed the documents. And Leon is not part of this discussion. I kept my voice firm. This is between us. He's the father of my child, Sage. And that's the only reason he's not facing corporate espionage charges. I leaned back in my chair. Take it or leave it, Nicole. Harvey cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a break. No, Nicole interrupted, reaching for a pen. I'll sign. As she scrawled her signature across the pages, my phone lit up with a message from Christine. Leon's in the lobby. Says he needs to talk to you both. Important. Speaking of the devil, I muttered, showing Nicole the message. She put down the pen. We should hear him out. Fine. I stood up. Harvey, could you... Minutes later, Leon walked in, clutching a manila envelope. He looked worse than at the hospital. Unshaven, his clothes slightly rumpled. Make it quick, I said. He pulled out several papers from the envelope. I've been offered a position in Dubai. Nicole's hand flew to her stomach. Dubai? But the baby... I'm not asking you to come with me. He placed the papers on the table. I'm here to sign away my rights. The room fell silent. Even Harvey, who'd seen his share of family drama, looked shocked. What are you talking about? Nicole's voice shook. I'm poison here. Leon ran a hand through his hair. Everything I touch falls apart. The company, our relationship. I need to start fresh. And you both need me gone to heal. I picked up the papers. Legal documents relinquishing any claim to company assets and, more surprisingly, parental rights. You can't be serious, Nicole whispered. I am. He turned to me. You were right, Sage. About everything. I betrayed you, the company, our future, and Nicole. He looked at her, his eyes wet. I ruined your relationship with your sister. I can't fix that while I'm here. So you're running away? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. That's your solution? I'm giving you both what you need. A clean break. He pulled out a pen. Unless you object. Nicole stood up suddenly, knocking her chair backward. I need some air. As she rushed out, Harvey followed. leaving Leon and me alone. Dubai? I said flatly. That's far. Not far enough, probably. He started signing the papers. For what it's worth, I really did love you, Saij. I just loved myself more. Save the confessions for someone who cares. I gathered the signed documents. You should go. Nicole needs time to process this. He nodded, standing. At the door, he paused. Take care of them? Both of them? Get out, Leon. After he left, I found Nicole in the building's rooftop garden, Christine sitting quietly beside her. He's really leaving, Nicole said as I approached. Looks that way. I sat down on her other side. Are you okay? No, she wiped her eyes. But maybe that's fair. We hurt you so badly. Maybe this is our karma. Christine squeezed her hand and stood up. I'll give you 2 a minute. Once she was gone, Nicole turned to me. I don't want to do this alone. You won't be. The words surprised me as much as her. You signed the contracts, remember? We're stuck with each other now. She managed a weak laugh. Just like Cape Cod. No. I shook my head. This is different. This is us choosing to be sisters again, not just being born that way. My phone buzzed. Harvey reminding us about the press conference announcing the company's new structure. Ready to face the wolves? I asked, standing and offering her my hand. Nicole took it, letting me help her up. Together? Together. I straightened her dress. But if you ever betray me again, you'll destroy me completely? She attempted a smile. Worse, I'll make you handle all the quarterly reports. As we headed back inside, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't the one who hurt you, but yourself for letting them. 3 months passed in a blur of meetings, contracts, and tentative reconciliation. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when Harvey burst in, his usual composure shattered. Turn on the news, he said, grabbing the remote. The business channel filled my wall screen and my stomach dropped. There was Leon standing at a podium in Dubai, revealing company secrets to the international press. Systematic manipulation of market data, his voice filled my office. The company's Asian expansion was built on fraudulent numbers. My phone exploded with notifications. Nicole burst into the office, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. Have you seen? I'm looking at it right now. I turned up the volume. Their father knew, Leon continued. He covered it up for years. I have proof. Nicole collapsed into a chair. He's lying. Dad would never. Ms. Sage, Julia rushed in. Marcus Stewart is on line 1, and the SEC just called. I held up my hand for silence, watching Leon pull out documents on screen, documents I'd never seen before with our father's signature clear as day. Harvey, I turned to him. Is this possible? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Your father. He had his ways of doing things. You knew, Nicole's voice cracked, all this time? I suspected. Harvey sat heavily up, but I never had proof. My phone rang again. Christine. Turn on the news, she said when I answered. Already watching. Can you come over? On my way. I turned back to the screen just as Leon dropped his final bomb. And I have evidence that current management knew about these irregularities and chose to continue the deception. That's a lie. Nicole struggled to her feet. We never. She stopped suddenly, grabbing her stomach. Nicole! I rushed to her side. The baby, she gasped. Something's wrong. The next few hours were chaos. While Christine took Nicole to the hospital, Harvey and I dealt with the fallout. The SEC wanted meetings. Shareholders were panicking. Our stock was in free fall. We need to make a statement, Harvey said, pacing my office. Get ahead of this. With what? I gestured at the stack of documents he'd just shown me. Our father built this company on lies. Everything we thought we were protecting. My phone buzzed. Christine. Baby coming. Get here now. Go, Harvey said. I'll handle things here. At the hospital, I found Christine in the waiting room. How is she? In labour. She's asking for you. I followed a nurse to the delivery room. Nicole lay there, pale and scared. Seiji, she reached for my hand. I'm sorry. About everything. About Dad. Stop, I took her hand. That doesn't matter right now. But the company will still be there tomorrow. I squeezed her hand. Right now you have more important things to focus on. Hours later, as dawn broke over the city, my niece entered the world. 6 pounds, 4 ounces of new beginnings. She's perfect, Nicole whispered, cradling her daughter. I watched them from the corner of the room, my phone silently cataloguing the destruction of everything our father built. Harvey had sent preliminary numbers. We'd lost millions in market value. The SEC was launching a formal investigation. Do you want to hold her? Nicole asked. I hesitated, then stepped forward. As I took my niece in my arms, she opened her eyes, bright, innocent, untouched by the sins of her grandfather or the mistakes of her parents. What are you going to name her? I asked. I was thinking, Grace. Nicole watched us carefully. Because that's what we all need right now. My phone buzzed again. Harvey. Press conference in 2 hours. What's our play? Looking down at Grace, I made my decision. We tell the truth, I texted back. All of it. That could destroy everything, he replied. No, I wrote. Lies destroyed everything. The truth might save us. I handed Grace back to Nicole. I have to go handle something, but I'll be back. Sage? Nicole called as I reached the door. Whatever happens with the company, we're still sisters, right? I thought about our father, about his lies and the empire he built on them, about Leon's betrayal and his final act of revenge, about karma and consequences and the tiny baby who deserved better than all of this. Always, I said, but this time we do things differently. No more secrets. No more lies. As I left the hospital, the sun was fully up, painting the sky in shades of new beginnings. Sometimes, I realized, revenge doesn't look like what you expect. Sometimes it looks like truth, like grace, like the courage to tear everything down and build it back up right. The boardroom was packed with reporters as I approached the podium. Nicole sat in the front row, Grace sleeping peacefully in her arms. Harvey stood to my side, his face grim but supportive. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady. Today I want to talk about legacy, not just my father's, but the one we choose to create. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as I pulled out the documents Leon had revealed, along with others he hadn't known about. These papers show systematic fraud spanning 2 decades. My father built this company on deception, and for that, we are deeply sorry. I paused, meeting the eyes of various reporters. But that ends today. I outlined our plan, a complete restructuring, transparent audits, compensation for affected parties. With each detail, I watched the reporters' expressions shift from skepticism to cautious hope. Ms. Sage, a reporter stood up. Sources say you knew about these irregularities. How do you respond? I didn't know, I said firmly. But I should have. My desire for revenge against my sister and against Leon, blinded me to what was happening in my own company. Nicole shifted in her seat, tears streaming down her face. And now? Another reporter called out. What happens to the company? We rebuild, I gestured to Nicole. My sister and I are announcing a complete overhaul of our operations. Every contract, every deal will be reviewed. We're bringing in independent auditors and establishing new oversight measures. And what about Leon? Someone shouted. Will you press charges? No. I saw Nicole's head snap up in surprise. His actions, while devastating, forced us to confront uncomfortable truths. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to see what really matters. After the press conference, Christine found me in my office, packing up my father's old photographs. That was quite a show, she said, picking up a frame. You okay? Getting there. I sat on the edge of my desk. The SEC is being surprisingly cooperative, given our voluntary disclosure. And Nicole, taking Grace home today? I smiled slightly. She asked me to come over for dinner. Will you go? The door opened before I could answer. Nicole walked in carrying Grace. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but someone wanted to see her aunt before heading home. Christine squeezed my shoulder and slipped out, leaving us alone. That was brave, Nicole said, sitting down. What you did in there. It was necessary. I reached out to touch Grace's tiny hand. She deserves better than what Dad left us. We all do. Nicole shifted Grace to her other arm. I got a message from Leon. My hand froze. What did he want? To apologize, actually. He said watching you handle everything with such grace made him realize what he lost. She looked up at me. He's not coming back. Good. I stood up, walking to the window. The city stretched out below, unchanged despite our world turning upside down. You know this won't be easy, right? Rebuilding everything? Nothing worth doing ever is. Nicole joined me at the window. Remember what Mom used to say about storms? It's not about waiting for them to pass, I quoted. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Well, Nicole adjusted Grace's blanket, I'd say we're in for quite a dance. My phone buzzed. Harvey with updates about our major clients. Most were staying, impressed by our transparency. A few had jumped ship, but surprisingly, Marcus Stewart wasn't one of them. He says he respects how we handled things, Harvey's message read. Wants to discuss a legitimate merger when the dust settles. I showed Nicole the message. What do you think? Ready to build something real this time? Together? She smiled, reminding me of summers in Cape Cod, of promises made and broken and made again. Together. I touched Grace's cheek gently. For her. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows through the office windows, I realized something profound. Revenge hadn't given me what I wanted. Peace had come from facing the truth, from choosing to break cycles instead of perpetuating them. Take her, Nicole said suddenly, holding out Grace. I need to use the bathroom. This time I didn't hesitate. As I held my niece, she opened her eyes and grabbed my finger with surprising strength. Hey there, little one, I whispered. Welcome to the family business. Don't worry, we're doing things differently now. Grace gurgled in response, and for the first time in months, I felt truly, completely at peace. Sometimes karma isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And sometimes, the best revenge is choosing not to seek it at all.